It's regarding the same. They have both for the disposal, waste disposal. So one's an ordinance and one's a resolution. That's the only difference.
But number 8, we're setting the pricing for commercial business on how much they're going to get charged. Probably. That's going to be the policies that they're changing. Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Number 5.
You're on.
We are waiting for 2 of our other commissioners. All right, I don't see them up here.
Yeah. That's because the overhead projector is not the computer. But we have both.
Oh, they are on.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, if everyone would take their seat, and if there is overflow, go to the next room. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the St. Augustine Beach City Commission for August 3rd, 2020. And there are 2 commissioners that will be joining us via Zoom. Public comment has been received either through email on agenda items or tonight. Please feel free to have public comment in general, public comment, 3 minutes, or if it's towards an agenda item, then 2 minutes. And welcome everyone. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If the city clerk would call the roll, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England,
Here.
Vice Mayor Casca,
Here.
Commissioner George,
Here.
Commissioner Rumwell,
Here.
Commissioner Zamora.
Here.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of several meetings. Our emergency meeting on July 2nd, the regular commission meeting on July 6th, the continuation of that meeting on July 7th, and a special commission meeting on July 7th. Commissioners, I'm sure you've had a chance to read our minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved, Mayor.
All right.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Would you call the vote on that, Beverly, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England,
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Zamora,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca,
Yes.
Commissioner George.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. I understand there are a couple of additions to the agenda for tonight. Beverly, I think you have one.
Yes, ma'am.
That is for COVID testing. Max, do you want to address the additions to the agenda for tonight, please?
Well, first, Mayor, I need to bring to your attention a deletion of part of one. It's item number 7. The lady who wanted to lease the property at the retention pond for injured bird recovery facilities asked that that be on the agenda for September.
Oh, okay.
But the lady who wants to lease it for honeybee hives, she plans to be here.
Okay.
Now, the additions to the agenda are Beverly's COVID agreement, that we have an agreement with Mayo Clinic that they will test city employees who may have reason to think they've been exposed, and the test results can be done very quickly. How quickly?
Within 2 days.
2 days. So
And
we'd like to add that to the agenda at some point, maybe under new business.
Unless there's an objection, commissioners, I'd suggest we add this to new business at the end.
That could be number 9.
Mayor, I have an addition to the agenda as well.
Yes, Commissioner.
I know that there are quite a few people there from the Ocean Walk subdivision, and I believe Mr. Tredick was going to do a presentation during staff comments. I'd like to see if we could either put that to presentations at the very beginning or at the beginning of old business as 3A.
Well, I agree with you, we should add it to old business. And since we have participants here also from Second Street, would you consider adding it after the consideration of Second Street or at the end of old business?
I'm fine at the end of Second Street. I think that's fine. I think there's quite a few for both agenda items. I just didn't want them to sit around till the end of old business.
All right. Hearing no objections, we will add Ocean Walk as item number 4 under old business. And then we will renumber from there. The garage be number 5. We'll just renumber from that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, Max, any other additions or deletions to the agenda for tonight?
None for me, Mayor.
Okay, and I think we've already covered changes to the order of topics?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. There are no presentations, and we can go to public comment. That's our general public comment, in which you can speak on any item you wish or desire, 3 minutes. We do have wipes at the table at the podium here for your convenience after a speaker, and then you come up if you want to wipe it down. They are there for your convenience. And so I will open it up for public comments. And Mr. Reynolds, I see you are ready.
I am, thank you. Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. You want to start the clock? Commissioners, I didn't get to make the budget meeting. And I was very disappointed under expenditures to not see the waste disposal subsidy being given to the condo owners. We've really come a long way. You're not charging full price. Those are hundreds of condo owners that are paying into the general fund that are being cheated. Now, tonight, I opened the mail before I come here. I wish I didn't. It's stuffed with political mailers. Now, as you know, I've always said, you're stealing from the condo owners. They're subsidizing Sea Colony residents' trash pickup. Can you imagine if we really had a bunch of residents that really understood what's going on? First of all, I don't even believe the Sea Colony residents would want their trash subsidized. I think they'd be embarrassed if they knew their trash pickup is being subsidized by condo owners. It's bizarre. It's gone on for a long time. I would tell each individual commissioner, distance yourself from that. Unless you all 5 collectively think it's okay to steal from the condo owners. Because in those political mailers, if any of you ever had the desire to run for higher office, I'll be giving your opponents this. I'll be saying, you voted to steal from those condo owners. Because it's going on for years that they have been cheated out of the waste disposal subsidy that Sea Colony residents are getting, or the homeowners that are getting. And remember now, the homeowners that are getting them over in the 10th Street area, those blocks over there, they're the same ones that leave their trash out all weekend. Easter weekend, Good Friday, They dragged their trash out and left it till Easter Sunday, then Monday. I don't really think this city needs to continue stealing from the condo owners, because it's easy. All you have to do is give them a subsidy check. The same thing you're giving everybody else. Thank you for taking public comments, and wear goggles.
Anyone on the right side of the committee room here, would you like to come and have your 3 minutes public comment? Good evening.
Evening. I'm hoping you can hear through this, and I'm not sure right and left because it was just all out there, but I knew that I did not need a speaker's card. I did sign one and turn it in on another issue. I would like to commend this.
For the record,
Ann Palmquist,
Ann, thank you.
213 10th Street. I'd like to commend the commission's efforts, but I think it's a little over the top when it is not being broadcast. I tried to check before, I did check before I came to see if I could watch the event and the meetings, and I have asked in the past why we do not still broadcast, and the answer has been the typical, it's too expensive, we can't afford it. When you have issues that can bring out this many people, even though some will be slightly one-sided for their own issues, there is a need and an interest in the city for the participants to take part and to speak up. But if you are saving money in one way of not broadcasting or not linking this meeting to the regular broadcast that can be and used to be done, that is a false savings. I do have one other issue, and again, it's a false presumption of beautification committee that I serve on when we've got at least 7 dead palm trees at the apex of Publix and the Winn-Dixie. I've asked about it, I've raised an issue, not only within the committee, but also with our city manager. And again, it's like, well, we'll do something maybe sometime. The commission is responsible, not just the manager, not just the beautification. I know we've been told as a committee, oh, they'll look into it, but the people went out of business or something. But replacing the dead palms at a major entrance to our city would be a nice priority. If it's either budgeting to the beautification or simply out of your budget, those are 2 money items that affect our community and the involvement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in this room want to come up for general public comment?
And Mayor, while they make their way up, I just wanted to clarify for Ms. Palmquist, this commission meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube. It's streaming live. It's not on the Comcast anymore, I believe. But it is currently being watched live on YouTube.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there.
All right. Your name and address, please.
My name is Richard Ayub, and I live at 712 Michler Boulevard. And I'm here just to make some public comments and something for you to think about. And I was recently advised that we have a tax agenda initiative that's getting ready to hit us. And taxes don't go down, they go up. And I would like the commission and whoever's involved to think about the residents of St. Augustine Beach. We're all under stress. COVID is around, and a lot of people are out of work. A lot of businesses have gone down like mine. And so we're all struggling. And to add more taxes to our property right now is a bad decision. I can't stop you from doing it, but I want to make sure that you understand. If you're having a problem with your budget, I'm sure we can call on some major accounting firms to come in and help you. We can do an accounting of what's going on. If you have a shortfall, we can straighten it out. I run multi-million-dollar businesses, and now's not a good time to raise taxes. And so consequently, I wish all of you would consider what I've said. And let's reorganize like everybody else. Every homeowner is reorganizing. You know, the people who lost their jobs, who businesses are going down like mine. We have to cut out some stuff. And consequently, so does the city. All of you, I'm sure, are getting the same pay, whatever it is. But independent people like myself are being penalized for not being able to open up. My admin is 1 day a week and we're 15 feet apart. I mean, it's rough. And then to put a burden on all of the people in your city, in my city, is not right. So please think about it.
Thank you, sir.
Did I give you my name?
I believe you did.
Richard?
And yes, you did.
712 Meikler.
Meikler. Mr. Slavin, good evening.
Good evening. Ed Slavin, box 384, edslavin.com. Want to thank you for public comment. I think we should be doing this by telephone, the way the county lets you do it, and we talked about that, you and I, Mayor, this afternoon. Also, at the City of St. Augustine, we cleaned up the microphones speakers, and I think that's the standard of care, that some city employee ought to be here rather than having us do it ourselves. It is the standard of care to clean this speaker. At any rate, you don't need a 15% property tax increase. The city hasn't earned it and the people can't afford it, and you need to cut taxes or keep them the same and not raise them. C.T. Vivian died and was buried. And I know in the news on John Lewis, a lot of us missed that. And of course, the St. Augustine Record didn't even cover it. But C.T. Vivian was a civil rights leader who was nearly murdered out here at St. Augustine Beach Pier by the KKK. He was nearly murdered and drowned when we had the wade-ins at St. Augustine Beach as part of the Civil Rights Movement in 1964. And I have asked repeatedly to have a small civil rights museum in St. Augustine Beach located near the pier in honor of the civil rights activities in St. Augustine Beach. And the last time I got a response was from the spouse of the then mayor back in 2016. It was Robert Samuels. And he said, and I quote, "We don't need a civil rights museum. We don't need a national park in Seashore. We don't need cognitive misers to tell us how to run our governments. And we don't need people like the St. Augustine Beach getting favors that they don't deserve." You need to look to cut the budget. My mentor, Nahum Litt, who was the chief judge of the U.S. Department of Labor from 79 to 95, said, you can cut any budget by 10%. I'd like to see y'all be real creative in proposing budget amendments. You need to enforce your policies in the future in terms of public participation. You need an inspector county-wide. We need a county-wide charter, which would include an inspector general and an ombuds applicable to every governmental unit in St. Johns County, including both cities, including all the special taxing districts. You know, and the constitutional officers, or as I say, unconstitutional officers like Sheriff David Shore. And if on September 3, 2010, the day after her daughter was murdered, if Patty O'Connell had an inspector general to report to, might not have had to have the New York Times report on the Michelle O'Connell murder, might not have had to have PBS Frontline and everybody else report on it. But our systems of government here in St. Johns County leave much to be desired. And again, if I were you, I wouldn't contract with any white supremacist organization, including the St. Augustine Beach Civic Association, which actually refused to provide the ability to take SNAP benefits at the farmers market. Absolute racism on the part of the Civic Association. And I thank you.
Anyone else in this room want to avail themselves of public comment? Anyone comment, opportunity, 3 minutes. I'm getting the high sign that there's no one outside.
Here I am, Mayor. I did have something to do. I know we're short on time tonight with all the public here to discuss meetings, but I would just like to invite my colleagues as well as the public, to take a look over at the Pier Park, try to scope out our civil rights monument there. And St. Augustine Beach was the, the site of some of the real momentous historical civil rights events. And I want to bring it to the Commission's attention so that we can, with fresh eyes in the current climate, evaluate if we think maybe something more needs to be done to highlight that monument and the historic events that happened here. I know we've got some budget constraints, but I'm sure some things could be done with little to no investment by the city. And certainly it's a worthy cause that I think we could get some donations from some of the businesses. So we don't have time to really get into it on this month's agenda, but I would like to look at that in more depth next month. I also thought that the request from the Beautification Committee was a good one regarding those trees, and I just want to voice support for the projects of the Beautification Committee. And if they need our help to get some funds diverted, I think we need to do that. I know we have certain reserves not reserves, but accounts, funds set aside for those sorts of projects, and really we need to address that as well. I agree. So for now, that's the extent of my comments. I'll reserve the remaining comments for the agenda items.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Samora.
Yeah, just a quick update. The VCB did meet this week. We had a Zoom board meeting on Tuesday. The major topic there was, for those that aren't aware, St. Johns County kind of advanced the VCB $2 million to do advertising between June and the end of September. And that is approximately 40 to 50% of a normal year's budget. So it was quite a big sum of money to spend in a short period of time. So the VCB debated back and forth for quite a while and decided we're going to preserve some of that money, a little bit less than half of that money, to roll into next year's budget. So we're not cramming a whole bunch of advertising into the summer and before Labor Day to attract people here. Things are changing. Not all businesses are open, so they thought it would be best used to push some of that money back and preserve it for next year. Or maybe even this winter. So that was the big topic of conversation there. I will say that there were many thanks from other board members and other municipal partners on our mask policy. That was recognized, and also Melinda and Bill's job of putting up the mask up signs and whoever else was involved in that. They commented on that. They were nice, clear at the city entrances and along the boulevard. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Samora, what demographic areas were the advertising
So the advertising, to the VCB, the executive board and the folks that are actually doing the groundwork, they had to retool the entire promotional plan for the area to focus on drive-in visitors. So we were focused on anybody in Florida and drive-in from the southeast type of visitors. I think I've seen that type of visitor out here. The hotels out here at the beach are full on the weekends, and I think it is making a positive impact as far as promoting the area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor, your comments?
Yes, so we had a Census Committee wrap-up meeting on the 16th of July, and lots of really positive and good news to report. St. Johns County response is ranked number 2 in the entire state of Florida and exceeded the 2010 county, state, and national response rates. St. Johns County reported over 5% above the national response rate, with 68% participation so far to date. St. Johns County also showed a population increase of about 25%, which I'm sure that we've all noticed. So what does this mean? Well, the impact of these figures will affect our city and our county for generations to come, because it's significant in calculating the funding figures and dollars that we receive from the state level and from the national level. The county effort was led by County Commissioner Jimmy Johns, who collaborated with 34 local supporting agencies, all working together to help get the response rate that we targeted. If anyone has not responded to the census yet, don't worry, there's still time. The door-to-door campaign will begin August 11th. If you did not mail in your response or respond online, you'll probably have a census worker knocking at your door. You can still respond by online by October 31st at my2020census.gov. Again, that's my2020census.gov if you have not already taken your put in your census. Also, just a question, I guess, to staff. The county received many millions of dollars through the CARES Act. I did notice in their budgeting that the city of St. Augustine requested $1.5 million in assistance, but our city requested $150,000. And I was wondering if there was any kind of explanation for that, or if we knew any more about that. It seems like it would be a good avenue to investigate with with our budget restraints as they are. That's all I have.
Okay, Max, would you like to respond to what we requested as under the CARES Act so far?
So what I have on my tabulation is about $10,000, and that is directly related to some overtime for closing the beaches, opening the beaches, and then the signs that we just purchased and put up, the banners, masks, hand sanitizers, the spray gun, things of that nature for cleaning. I believe the other part of it is something that Max, you submitted with regards to perhaps the restrooms. Okay, and so I think there was a communication there between he and the county regarding the expansion and adding the bathroom to the park, and that would then facilitate in, spreading out the people going to the restrooms that are on the beach, and by adding that one new facility.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it. I was just hoping that there'd be extra avenues that we could explore to secure some more of that funding. It seems we're on the short end of that stick, and it's a really big stick.
I think that that's an ongoing process of evaluating what we might be able to request legitimately under the CARES Act. So we'll keep going, and please feel free to check in on that.
I'll do that in my spare time.
All righty. I am not going to bring up any items myself tonight and to move along the agenda. And so with commissioner comments closed, we'll go to our public hearings. And the first item is to amend Section 10 of the City Code on Solid Waste Collection.
Mayor. Item number 1 is ordinance, second public hearing and second reading to amend, revise, and restate Chapter 10, the garbage and trash of the city code. The need for revision of Chapter 10, there was a few things that had to be done. The existing Chapter 10 only referred to disposal in the non-ad valorem section. That had to be expanded to include collection and recycling. After the ordinance was modified this spring, some service premises complained that they had hardships and didn't have room for dumpsters. So language was needed to put in there to have a hardship petition for service premises of 6 or more units. And there were some minor clarifications in a few places in the code. Since the first hearing, the commission had asked for a few changes. The first one was to remove the townhouse definition and tried to make the modifications so it wasn't specifically defining things as much as it was just basing it upon the number of units.
And so we were able to remove the townhouse definition and still provide a hardship clause for service premises of 6 or more units, both residential and commercial, and the language was changed to accommodate that. One change we did make was all condominiums and apartments were deemed commercial service premises. It was kind of arbitrary. The number of 5 or less were residential in the past and 6 or more were commercial. It seemed a lot cleaner to just condos, apartments, commercial. They don't own the underlying land for the unit. Townhomes would then fall into the residential category. So it just cleaned it up a little bit. Solid waste and recycling services for dwelling units and condominiums and apartments were made to match those that are provided for residential service premises. Dwelling units and condos and apartments were excluded from having to buy a city cart like the other commercial businesses have to. It was, again, it wasn't necessary. They already own waste receptacles. We're also setting up the fee structure so that we set the fee for these condos and apartments by resolution, and they'll pay the exact same fee as the residential service premises that are paying the non-ad valorem assessment. So that way there's equity between someone in an apartment, a townhouse, a condo. They're all paying the $178 a year. So with that, our recommendation is to approve the ordinance 20- we don't have a number yet, but 20-XX on second reading. And I wrote the language of the ordinance. Happy to take any questions.
Very good job. I went through it and really like the way on residential we addressed it by the number of units, whether it's a single family, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, up to the section where you added 6 or more. So that was very good and really a good job by staff and our attorneys on this. Is a very complicated section of our ordinances, and I think we've done a good job on right-sizing and putting this Section 10 together, so thank you. I think we have, do we have any public comment on this?
I have no cards for number 1. I have one card. Mr. Tom Reynolds.
I'm in 50 Brigantine Court. Commissioners, Mr. Tredick has done a lot of great work with all this waste disposal. And I got to tell you something, I read it all, and he's a really excellent public works director. I think we all know that already. Anyways, Commissioners, I'm kind of bummed again that we're not addressing, because this, to me, they could have addressed the same thing with the waste disposal subsidy. I almost feel like the public works director has done a lot of work, and when I just heard you say, well, legal, you want to thank legal, and I think to myself, is this a move that's going to freeze the condo owners subsidizing trash? I wish I had money. I'd write a check. I'd write a check to a lawyer, and I'd have to take the city to task, because I am a victim of this. Because I rent. I pay $1,420 for a 2-bedroom condo. I looked at the bill. I mean, they pay a lot of property tax because I'm a renter, and I'm paying that. So I appreciate all the work that Bill Tredick has done. And for the record, Commissioners, when Bill Tredick got up here and he gave the cost on waste disposal, he broke it down. He did not make any recommendations. When Commissioner George said, I'm going to go with staff's recommendation, she was corrected once, and she doubled down and made a motion to go with that based on staff's recommendation. They never did. And then on her own motion, she voted against it. Anyways, thank you for taking public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. It's our desire to bring the expenses down eventually and get rid of that subsidy that you keep talking about, eventually.
Thank you, Margaret.
All right, any other public comment on this item?
None on this item.
All right, then, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Tredick? I'll go to the commissioners on the phone. Commissioner Rumwell?
No, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you again to Mr. Tredick. He did a great job of getting this to where it needs to be, and I'm ready to make a motion after all the rest of the comments from commissioners. Thank you.
Okay, is there any, to move this along, is there, we've seen this before, is there any commissioner who has a question or would like to add a comment at this time? Please speak up.
I've got
Thank
one.
you, Mayor. After Commissioner Samora, I do. Thank you,
No,
sorry.
okay, I will, my only question is, you've got a September 30th date in here for, under the commercial waste. Is that going to give enough time for implementation? That is my only concern.
Yes, I think as far as the condos and things like that, that are going to continue to get our service, that's not going to change. That will continue. We've already ordered the garbage cans for the commercial premises. Hopefully we'll have them in the next few weeks. If that becomes a problem, because there could be a production issue there, because we ordered a lot of very popular cans, and they're struggling just like everyone else to keep up with demand right now. If that's the case, we could continue to operate under the old plan for a month or two if necessary. But the only thing I can think that would hold us up is if the cans don't come in for some reason.
Okay.
But they're on order.
Very good. That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner George.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question was in, under the residential waste section, Mr. Tredick, there is the paragraph D, D regarding where owners of residential service unit, premises with mixed-use buildings can kind of consolidate into whatever the commercial waste service is, whether it be a dumpster or otherwise. But I had a hard time finding a similar provision under the commercial waste section. So I know we'd had a lot of discussion about the primary expense for the city is for the truck to stop. So if there is multi-unit commercial property that does not exceed the 6-unit maximum, I thought there was going to be language that allowed those unit owners to kind of condense into the same can if feasible for their business. Am I missing that, or was that left out intentionally?
No, I actually think that's a good catch. And let me check with the attorney. Could we change in section D, could we change residential service to dwelling unit contained within a mixed unit building? And would that solve the problem?
I think it would. It's a good idea to double check with the attorney. I think that might work.
Under section
And
10.
then I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
So we're talking about 10.4 D?
Yes.
Okay.
It's under the residential section, but.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that is under the header of residential. So you might just want to have a similar paragraph under commercial. It might be more neat and easier to research.
That would be my recommendation, is that we would want to copy that and paste it into the commercial and adjust it for that.
Commissioner George, any further comments?
Just kind of building on what Commissioner Samora had mentioned, I just, regarding the effective date. So to be clear, the current timeline would be adding this new fee onto the tax bill coming out in November. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay. checked with Patty, but I think that's correct. And the traditional commercials are going out with their VCRs, right? Yes.
At what point do you intend to advise the commercial clients of the changes?
Well, we've sent some communications to them already. I was planning to send another letter after this passes.
Okay.
Informing them of its passage and that reminding them of the deadlines that we mailed them about a few months back.
Okay. That way they'll have about 45 days notice, right?
Yes, and we will work with them.
Okay.
We're not going to leave trash out if nobody's picking it up, but we do have to make that transition, and it seems like the fiscal year seems like the right time to do it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Vice Mayor, any comments on Section 10?
I do not have any comments at this time.
All right. If there's no further comments, I will ask the attorney to read the ordinance. Oh, yeah, read the ordinance, and then we'll entertain a motion.
An ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, relating to garbage and trash, amending the code of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Chapter 10, Garbage and Trash, to amend and revise and restate the entire Chapter 10 of the City Code and providing an effective date.
All right. If someone would like to make a motion regarding these changes on Section 10?
Mayor, I make a motion to pass ordinance with the changes made by Commissioner George.
I'll second that motion, and that is to, in Section 10-4, residential waste, Section D, to copy and paste that in the commercial section. And I'll second that motion. Would the city clerk call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner George?
Principally due to the timing of the implementation, I'm voting no. Thank you.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, and then our next is to Mr. Law on the mixed-use ordinance.
Yes, ma'am. This is the final reading. We've seen this ordinance, I believe, 3 different times. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval as written. Nothing has changed from last month.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item, please? Okay, all right.
Fiona Godfrey.
Mr. Law's got another one coming up, don't you? Where you're speaking to?
Yes, ma'am. A little bit later in the meeting.
That's all right.
All right, both of you?
Yes, all
Okay,
right.
that's quite all right.
Got my mask. Tom Reynolds, I'm sorry. 50 Brigantine. I just had one simple question. On this mixed use, does that mean that somebody could come in and open up a medical marijuana shop when they make it mixed use? That's all my only question. Thank you.
Mr. Law, do you mind addressing Mr. Reynolds' question?
Not at all. Mixed use, if we recall, about a half a year ago, was set up to operate off A1A South only, not along A1A Beach Boulevard. So the mixed use overlay would have no bearing on the medical use marijuana.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And is there any other public comment on this item number 2, the mixed-use ordinance?
Not on this item.
Okay. All right, and I'll go ahead and ask the attorney to, well, is there any questions on this ordinance from our commissioners?
No question from Commissioner George, Mayor.
Okay.
No question. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Hearing none, I'll ask the attorney to read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach relating to and amending Section 3, .02.02.01 sub A of Appendix A Land Development Regulations of St. Augustine Beach Code by designating it as mixed-use districts, all commercially zoned land use districts within the corporate limits of the city of St. Augustine Beach, from the south side of S Street to the northerly city limits north of Pope Road, to accommodate a mixture of retail, service, residential, and other uses, containing findings and providing an effective date.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance on the mixed-use boundaries.
Second.
Will you call our roll vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuska?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Blumwell?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. There are no consent items, so we will dive right into old business. And the first item under old business is the opening of 2nd Street west of 2nd Avenue. Mr. Tredick, and I believe we do have some changed circumstances you need to advise us of formally.
We do have a few changed circumstances. The last meeting, we talked about the first 2 lots on the north side being, Mr. Kenny was proposing to purchase those. Apparently, he is no longer doing that. Another gentleman has purchased those lots and is now against the opening of 2nd Street. So instead of having 11 in favor out of 16, that reduces it to 9. So 9 are in favor. I think 6 are against, and 1 we didn't receive a response from. So it changes the percentage. A majority still are in favor, but we definitely are less than the 65% that we talked about in previous meetings.
And our policy has been and still is that opening up of that street would require more than just a simple majority, but like a 66, 68, 2/3 majority of the current owners on 2nd Street west of the dead end to open it up.
Yeah, all through this process, we'd mentioned a number of 65% to consider some sort of assessment, if the special assessment. I don't think that's statutory, but I do think that it is it has at least been
a policy.
Our expressed policy, yes.
And also the policy would be that to open up the street, the owners affected by the new street would pay for the cost of paving in front of the lots, right?
That's correct. And I had sent the commission cost estimates, and in this I have the pros and cons of the 3 different options that we talked about. I can either go through that, or you can go through public comment, whatever your preference is, but we definitely have some changed circumstances.
Okay. So, so based on that, would you say that there's not an applicant in front of us tonight that is asking for the opening, or is there?
There is not.
There is not. Okay, so that takes some of the pressure off to do something right away. But I am going to open up after you do your presentation, I am going to open it up to the public and to the commissioners to talk about what we should do going forward on this, because it has come up repeatedly. And so perhaps it's time we address it in a way that is responsible for the city to our residents.
So I did cost analyses of 3 different options, actually 6 if you want to break it down a little, but 3 alignments, and I'll go through them one at a time. The first option I looked at was coming down from 3rd Street, and this is how approximately what it would look like if the entire road was built. Second option I looked at is going straight through on 2nd Street. Again, this is approximately what it would look like if that were built. I'll back up just a second. You'll look at, on coming from 3rd Street, we'd have to replace pretty much all of the 8-foot bike lane that's there. So that adds to the cost of this alignment. There's also some drainage pipe which would have to go in about halfway down the block. That was scheduled to be done with the 3rd lane drainage improvements, but since that project has been deferred, I included the cost of that in the cost of doing this project. As you can see, this one, the straight through, has the least impacts on anything. The sidewalk just as a crosswalk, mid-block crosswalk for the bike lane. Very simple configuration. Coming from the south, a good bit of the bike lane can be salvaged. We'll come in order to, I had to skew the roadway a little bit to get the radius appropriate to get around the drainage inlets, so I didn't have to replace drainage inlets in any of these scenarios. This one is between. It's close in cost to the 3rd Street option, but more than the straight through option.
Mr. Tredick, the cost of your options are not in the book, and I think you sent them to us via email.
Yeah, on my first slide, I was going to go back to them at the end, if that's okay.
Okay.
So then I looked at it 3 ways, only going to the end of the first 2 lots, too, for all 3 of those alignments, and because that was the proposal Mr. Kinney had given us. And I'll go back to the first slide. I probably had these in the wrong order. So 3rd Street, if we're building the whole road, would be about $278,000. Now, keep in mind, this does not include any utility, St. Johns County utility work. I didn't have a up-to-date number to put in there at this time. It's going to add to it significantly. But since there is available water and sewer on 2nd Avenue, it won't be out of sight. It'll just be significant. I do have an estimate from several years ago that Mr. Howell had done and gotten with the county, but it needs to be updated. From 2nd Street, we're looking at, what did I do? Okay. So from 2nd Street, straight through is about $195,000, and that's the cheapest alternative. If you come from 1st Street, it's less than from 3rd Street because you don't have the sidewalk replacement, you don't have the culvert work, so it comes in at about $244,000. If you're only looking at going to the end of the 2nd lot, those numbers come down, but the ranking is still the same. 2nd Street straight through is still the cheapest at $73,000. The second cheapest is from 1st Street at $123,000, and the more expensive is from 3rd Street at $158,000. So that's a breakdown. Those numbers are based upon DOT statewide, actually indexes for our region. So, you know, they'll be pretty close probably to what a bid would come in at. In the agenda, there were pros and cons to each. I can read through them if you'd like.
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay. Happy to take any questions.
On the estimates for the access through 1st Street or 3rd Street, it's my understanding that the owners on the affected lots would pay the cost to pave the street and improve the street directly in front of them, but that the city would have to pick up the cost of access from either 1st Street or 3rd Street. Is that correct, or is that up for discussion?
I think it's probably up for discussion. It's certainly, I believe it's what was talked about several years ago in 2014, that we may pay for the portion on 2nd Avenue if that alignment went through, but it's certainly up for discussion.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know whether legally we could charge residents for that portion.
I would defer to the attorney
Okay.
on that.
All right. Okay. All right. So I think right now we'll open it up for public comment.
Okay.
And then we'll go to commissioners on what we want to do next.
Mark Craddock? He might be in the other room. Mark Craddock?
He's coming.
The next speaker will be Regine If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Mark Craddock, 116 2nd Street. And just for the record, Bill's done a great job. So good evening, Commissioners. My wife and I are the new owners of lots 1 and 3 on Block 31, the 2 lots that Mr. Kinney was seeking to develop. I imagine he's no longer willing to put a road in, so I would request that the Commission pull this item or just not take any action at this time because there's nothing imminent. Mr. Tredick has already explained the 68% versus the current 56%, so there's not, the economy of scale to kind of make that assessment. Commissioner Samora had suggested revisiting the 2014 alignment because so much may have changed in 6 years. It's our intention not to develop these properties for a long time, so the road may not be put in for another 5 years or 10 years, so I would suggest it doesn't make sense to change a decision today either. If the Commission does elect to consider and vote on new alignments, I submit the following for consideration. Mayor England asked that the cost estimates for the 3 proposed alignments be presented. They weren't in the original packet, but Mr. Tredick's done a great job presenting that now, so I don't have any objections to what he's presented. You also stated that safety would be the #1 concern. Right now, the 2nd Street Road is only 18 feet wide, whereas the requirements of the city for a new road like that would be 22 feet wide. So it's a narrow street. Passing additional traffic and construction traffic through there would be a safety hazard for the existing residents of 2nd Street. If you note the provided maps of the 2nd and 3rd Street options, if you look at the way that you would exit the island, it would directly impact over 44 homeowners and significantly contribute to additional Beach Boulevard traffic congestion, whereas the 1st Street alignment, which is the current alignment, would directly impact only 2 homeowners, one of which has said he's okay with it, and would reduce Beach Boulevard traffic congestion because people could exit the island using the A Street egress. The pro and con analysis also ignores all the new construction on 3rd through 7th Street that's going to drive a lot more traffic that makes a 3rd Street alignment not make sense. So again, I just request that the Commission either reaffirm the 2014 decision or just elect to take no action because we don't believe that these properties will be developed in the near future. Thank you.
Regine de Toledo. I'm so sorry if I am. The next speaker will be Joe Pikozik. Sorry. I'm almost ashamed to say I was a school teacher and butchered everyone's name in my classroom.
It's okay. My name is Regine de Toledo, so that's the Spanish pronunciation, and I reside at 309 St. George Street. I'm a longtime owner of 2 of the lots on 2nd Street. They are the 3rd and 4th on the north side. And I was always opposed to the whole project of development in the first place. I continue to maintain my position. I don't have any plans to develop my lots, especially under the current financial situation, but really for the foreseeable future. So I agree with Mr. Craddock, and I would appreciate if you just pulled it from your consideration since there's no one actively approaching you, an applicant, as Mr. Tredick originally mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you. Joe Pikozik.
How you doing?
And the next speaker will be Marilyn Garris. And I apologize.
My name is Joe Pikosh. I live on 109 3rd Street, and my first time here. So I want to thank the Commission for starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Can't remember the last time I recited it in public, but it felt good. Since these new developments come up, the only thing I ask is that when you do revisit the ingress to the 2nd Street, please consider the businesses that will be operating on both 3rd and 1st Street. That is the main safety point that I think needs to be considered is those businesses create a lot of traffic right at the intersection getting into the street, especially on 3rd Street. Everybody knows that there's been a prevalent parking issue with the Kookaburra, and where you have a nice wide street now becomes a super narrow street because you have people parking on one side and then beach goers trying to get back and forth to the beach along with traffic coming both ways. So whenever you do consider the ingress, please consider the businesses on both of those streets when making your decision. Thanks.
Marilyn Garris. And the next speaker will be Josh Patterson.
Okay, I'm Marilyn Garris. I'm at 613 Nautical Way here in St. Augustine. I'm here this evening because I have been one of the lot owners that I am in favor of putting and extending the road. I bought my property back several years ago, and when I did my due diligence, majority of the people were in, and for whatever reasons, things were always swept underneath the rug, and it was just never addressed anymore. So I'm really disappointed to hear that Mr. Eric Kenny had pulled out of the deal. But so again, I'm in favor of putting the lot in, and I'm also aware when I bought it that we would absorb the cost of putting the road in. So I guess I will just wait and see and just hope for the best, because I've been sitting on this for a very long time now. And I am one of the first 4 lots that would like to build a home on it someday. Okay, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Josh Patterson. And the next speaker is James Whitehouse.
Hey, good evening. Josh Patterson, 203 3rd Street. I wanted to thank Bill for the information on this and the letter that was sent out to adjacent landowners. I own behind Mrs. De Toledo's lot, and I bought in 2016. And when I bought, I was assured when I did my due diligence that street would never happen by Mr. Howell, the Public Works Director at the time. I know other investors who were doing their due diligence on those lots and were told the same thing and opted not to buy. So, and I'm aware of the 2014 commission meeting where the minutes reflect, and the very last line of the meetings reflect that this issue wouldn't be brought up for approval again. So, I was surprised to see that it was brought up. I was also surprised to see the developments tonight, and I'm relieved that it's not moving forward at this time. And having said that, I would ask that instead of tabling this until another developer brings forth a proposal that would have a significant shared cost for the city and for taxpayers, that it's put to bed once again and the 2014 action is reaffirmed. So that's my request. I base that knowing that the council may be liable to not providing access to landowners to their lots, and council's probably advised that, which I respect, but I also wanted to point out that the city's potentially liable for having gone on record to investors like myself saying that street would not be developed. So just something to consider when this is considered. I know a lot of people that come to the beach to use that bike path and enjoy that bike path culture. It's part of the beach culture. It's part of why we bought there, and I'd ask that we preserve that. So thanks for your time.
James Whitehouse.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioner Samora, and Commissioner Romero, and Commissioner Pulaski on the phone. My name is James Whitehouse from St. John's Law Group, 104 Seagrove Main Street here in St. Augustine Beach, Florida. I am here on behalf of the other 8 landowners. You heard Mr. Tredick talk about 9. Ms. Garris is here. I represent the other 8 landowners on that lot. On that unopened portion of 2nd Street. Paul and Nancy Crage and their family have owned 3 of the lots since 2002, 2 of the lots since 2007. Mr. Andrew Garmani has owned the 3 lots that he owns on that street since 2004. So when this matter came in 2014, and they were told, they were part of the group that came to try to have it open back in 2014, and they were told that it was going to be opened, they don't have a position, and you guys know I came to you the first time you had a hearing on this, several weeks ago, and told you that I represented a number of the people on the unopened portion, and the fact that they didn't have a position particularly as to which way it comes in. They would just like it open to have reasonable access to develop their lots, which they were told that they were going to be able to develop back in 2014, although the money at the time was not readily available. I think we're moving forward now in a fashion where the money can be available. They are prepared to step in. There is an applicant. I sent your city manager an email yesterday when I found out that the other 2 lots were being purchased, and Mr. Kinney might not be involved, saying that my particular, the people that I represent are willing to step in and take that place. I can file an application. I could have filed one yesterday, I could have filed one today, I could file one tomorrow, and it could be on the next agenda, and we would have to talk about it. So we would ask that you move forward with discussing this, and as I said, they're entitled to reasonable access, and your attorney can tell you about that, but they would just like to have reasonable access. They don't have a position as to which way it comes in. They think going straight in would be better, because then, they have to pay for part of it, but they're prepared to pay their portion, and they would ask you to reasonably, think about that and talk about it. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ask a question for clarity as to who he represents.
Yes.
Is that, you mentioned 8 owners or the owners of 8 lots? Which?
The owners of 8 lots, there's Paul and Nancy Crage and their family own 5 of the lots, and Mr. Andrew Garmani owns 3 of the lots.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So then there was Ms. Garris in here tonight in person that is a lot owner that it was in favor, so that adds up to the 9.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ed Slavin?
Thank you. Ed Slavin, box 3084, cleanupcityofstaugustine.blogspot.com. To borrow a phrase from Mayor Tracy Upchurch, when he made a motion once to table an item having to do with denying people the right to vote, he said he wanted to move to table and put it in outer space. That's where this needs to go. Basically, you've heard the testimony of the affected neighbors who actually live there, and they like it the way it is. So why would you pave paradise? And why would you want to ruin the bike path? The speculator is not here. He's gone. He's no longer in the picture. He sold the lots in quo, and I don't think you need to spend any more time on this. And I think if you could phrase your motion to table in the strongest terms, if not the way that Tracy Wilson Upchurch would say it, in outer space, I don't think that meets parliamentary procedure standards, but if you would say tabled with prejudice, extreme prejudice, the idea that any developer can come in years later and undo a decision which you've been told, and I don't have any basis to disagree with it, was firmly based, and people were told in the past, this is it, we're doing it, we're not doing it. Isn't there a rule of finality? I know there is in litigation. All good litigation must come to an end, but when it comes to this neighborhood and their peaceful, quiet enjoyment, should non-resident speculators be able to push around this neighborhood, which is what I'm hearing. And I watched it on streaming video the last couple times, and I thought the speculator was rather much a bully, and I'm glad he's out of the picture. But I think the era of letting bullies and caudillos rule in St. Augustine Beach is over. And the standard, if I understand it, is not met. You don't have the requisite 2/3 of the property owner. So let's move to table with extreme prejudice. How's that? Thank you.
I have no more speaker cards on this item.
Okay, well then, I've got a couple of questions for the attorney. It's my understanding that the previous commissioners did not, in the previous minutes that I read, did not say that the item was completely tabled. They said that they had approved an access. They had everything was all lined up. They had, in 2015, they had approved an access through First Street, although that was never formalized to be a permanent decision. It was just a consensus. And so we are now at the point where kind of everything is clean and clear, and this commission could take action however it deemed appropriate.
Yeah, you're correct. They didn't set anything that was binding. They can't bind future boards without an official vote.
Okay. And also that the policy that the owners pay for the improvements, that was a policy that could be changed.
Correct.
And that the policy that we needed 2/3 or 65, 68%, whatever that is, that was a policy that could be changed. So commissioners, for your deliberations or comments tonight, I just want to make it clear that we have a clean slate that we could consider on what to do right now. And that we are looking at what is best for all our residents in the city, First Street, Third Street, Second Street, the Boulevard, everybody. We represent everybody. And is there anything else, Mr. Taylor, you would like to remind the commissioners of it before we get started?
The one thing I would like to remind the commission of is that there's going to be a price attached to moving forward if you decide to do that. And that price has to be paid for somehow. One of the things that we have looked into is a special district, but those are generally done by a developer when they own all the property, because that requires 100% unanimity of all the real estate owners. So it does not appear that that will be a financing avenue that would be appropriate in this situation. There may be some others out there. We may want to enter into some negotiations if we get an application.
You're talking about a special district. What about a special assessment?
That may be an option.
Okay. So our options, again, just because there was a little bit of distraction, our options, again, for if the commission decided to add this to a capital improvement plan for maybe down the road or something, what would be the financing options?
I believe you're looking at a special assessment, some sort of impact fees. We'd have to look and see how much we can charge on that to get how close we can get to covering the expenses. And then any extra would then have to be financed by the city.
And what about our duty to people who own the undeveloped land on Second Street? Can you comment on that?
You've got some level of discretion for timing and for moving forward, but they have a reasonable expectation to be able to develop that property. And so at some point, if you don't move processes along when you get an application, you endanger yourself to litigation. Now, you've got there's a lot of process time involved in there. There's reasonable studies that our staff could do. So I'm not saying this is a quick or knee-jerk decision, but at some point, if we're not reasonable, we do expose the city to liability.
If we stick to the policy of the 2/3 or 65, 66% before we move forward, does that help our position to if we have an applicant, active applicant?
That is not going to ultimately be a protective.
Okay.
So you're still going to have to address the issue. It would be nice if there was some level of unanimity, because that would allow for more intelligent development, and you'd have more people contributing at the initial outset, and so we would know what finances we could put towards something.
Okay. All right, well, I've taken up my questions.
Madam Mayor, I had one comment card. It got shuffled in the wrong stack. Okay. Evelyn Hammock, and I apologize.
I'm Evelyn Hammock. I live at 206 First Street. I've lived here about 5 years. I see people continually riding on that bike trail, walking their dogs on the bike trail. I also cannot even imagine having 2nd Street or 2nd Avenue extended. Right now, the people going down First Street is outrageous. You have the taco shop where they park all the way up and down First Street. You have Jack's. When they run out of room, they start parking down First Street. You have a microbrewery opening up now where you're going to have more people parking on First Street. You have the 2nd Avenue parking lot for the beach, and when they run out, they start parking on First Street. They even parked in my neighbor's yard and got mad at him and threw their garbage in his yard because he asked them to leave. And then we have the people that don't believe the dead end sign, and they also have to ride all the way down First Street, go to the end, and turn around because I guess they think it goes somewhere, and they don't realize what dead end means. And I think you'd be making a big mistake if you extended 2nd Avenue down across First Street. You have children that play out there right now. Like I said, bicyclists, walkers, riders, dog walkers, and it just goes on day and night. And that's our last little bit of greenery that we have left, and we'd like to keep it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm coming back to commissioners for their questions to our attorney or to Mr. Tredick and their thoughts. Commissioner Samora, would you like to begin tonight for us?
Where to begin? There's a lot with this one. Part of me wants to say, why are we going to discuss this if we don't have an applicant? But I think we're all here, everyone's here, so let's have a discussion. I don't know that we're going to be able to move forward with anything until we actually do have an applicant. This seems to be, as far as ingress and egress at 2 2nd West, I'll call it 2nd Street West. First, I do believe there's the owners of those properties that do want to have it opened up probably have a right to do so. I think the attorney guided us in that direction. As far as ingress and egress, it's come down to not in my backyard. We've heard from 1st Street, 2nd Street, and 3rd Street, and to sum it all up, it's not in my backyard. There's pros and cons to each of those routes. So I'd look back at the way the city was platted, and quite honestly, 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue should both be opened up the entire length, the way it was designed. I don't know that that's the way I would go with it, but it's a lot to consider here. I'm going to kind of reserve comment, I guess, until we hear from other folks.
All right, okay. Vice Mayor.
I would have to echo a lot of what Commissioner Samora had just said, is that in consideration of looking at all of the aspects, especially in the access to emergency vehicles, if this were to be opened up for those lot owners to have access, it seems that going up 2nd Avenue would make the most sense. But again, it comes down to...
going up 2nd Avenue or 2nd Street?
2nd Avenue. 2nd Street.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry. However, again, if we don't have an applicant, then do we really need to move forward at this point? However, I kind of feel like we will be having an applicant sometime in the near future. I don't know if it's necessary to put parameters in place. I'm grateful for Mr. Tredick's work in collecting all the information that we requested in such a short period of time. I don't think I have any other comments, but Mr. Law seems to be fidgeting almost beyond control over there. I think he has something that he would like to add about this.
I would just like to remind the commission that when you adopted the new comprehensive plan, you did agree under the transportation element, and this has no bearing on your decision today, but the city shall develop a plan to pave all unpaved local roads within the city limits based on available funding. Keep in mind, we do collect a rather large amount of impact fee money from the current development, and part of that is earmarked for the construction of new roads. So I just wanted you to be aware of your transportation element before you made any formal decisions, if you make any today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Law. Commissioner Rumwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Law answered the question. I know we have some funds coming, I think, from the Embassy Suite for impact fees that we have to use for new roads. The other questions I have is for staff. If you were to assess the landowners there off of 2nd Street that are have those lots available, and say some want to pay and the others do not want to pay, how does that work? And then the next question is, if we have an applicant who comes in, are they under a time frame to develop? So if we put a road in, can they just say thanks for the road and just keep the vacant lots for the next 10 years and then sit on that? So the questions are, for me, are what if they don't want to pay, and then if an applicant does come in, do they have a time frame to build?
Max, who should appropriately address those two questions? They're very good questions.
Yeah, I agree.
You're going to punt it to our attorney.
I would refer to Lex.
So let's make sure that I get it. If we can go back to the easy one first, is we do have rules and regulations about when projects can be started and stopped. And they would have impacts to them, but at some point, if they default and we build the road, then yes, we can kind of be left holding the bag. Although we would expect that the applicants have some skin in the game when they move forward. So there'll be some, at least the first few people will put some money in, and there should be a contribution to make this thing start. If we're looking at 8 applicants, that could be 8 or 9 applicants, that might be very significant for a starting budget to get some of this done. As far as what items and ways we have to pay for it, we already went through that. We went through that the special district is probably not, special assessment maybe, and the the other impact fees that they're already decided and know that they need to pay to some degree will be there. Did that answer all the questions, or do you have another question, Commissioner?
No, I just wanted to see if say, the folks that Mr. Whitehouse is representing say, hey, we want to have it done, and they become an applicant. Now, are they on the clock to develop that property? And then also, are they willing to pay? If they're willing to pay, they're willing to pay. We know that. But then the other homeowners, especially the family who bought the 2 lots that Mr. Kenny had in question, now they're not willing to do it. So now, how do we, I guess you can't force people. Maybe you can, maybe it's paid for. I don't know how that works. So I'm just trying to get an idea, and so the public understands kind of the process of what can happen. And then finally, the last thing is I know on 8th Street, that was paid for by the residents. So they did pay for that 8th Street, and I believe 10th Street was paid for by the developer. And so I just wanted to make sure that we have some sort of continuity within the city that we maintain. I'm trying to keep us all on track, that everything kind of lines up. So in the future, when this comes up, I think people, whether they're the applicant or the residents, they kind of understand the process of where things go.
Yeah. Commissioner, on the first part, the impact fees are collected initially before we begin our work. So those get collected in the front end.
We actually collect them prior to the energization of the building.
Right. So, yeah, so and then for continuity's sake, Brian probably has a better handle on what we've been doing.
Average houses that we're seeing constructed now are generating about a $20,000, give or take, impact fee. Of that money, I believe about half of it goes to the St. Johns County. It's allocated among schools, roads, parks. Then we get our percentage, where the predominant percentage is roads. That money's to be used for the creation of new roads. It's not for resurfacing, it's for the creation of roads. So that is I couldn't tell you how much money we have available that would be up to finance, but that is a great avenue for the city to move forward, whether it be this year, next year, or the following year. But keep in mind, your comprehensive plan does say that we have to develop a plan when funding's available.
I just wanted to make a note about the 8th. perhaps I misunderstood what you said about being stuck holding the bag for funds.
Right.
If not all of the property owners wanted to contribute or we didn't get the share that we were expecting. The funds were collected before work began on 8th Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that we would ever get stuck holding the bag. I don't know why we would want to start until we had the funds.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
I
probably
think that
misunderstood.
there's two different things. There is the cost to build the road, and if we have an applicant and some are willing to put money up front. But if we go forward, we will have to develop an engineering plan and the cost of those roads, and of course, a special assessment in case there are owners who decide, oh, I don't want it, therefore I'm not going to pay. Well, we will receive payment through a special assessment from all owners, some up front, some maybe over time. And then when the property is developed, if a house is put on there, there will be impact fees that can be used for other improvements in that area. And those impact fees could be used for directly for the rest of 2nd Street to improve it. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I can read a little paragraph from the St. Johns County impact fee chapter, and it pretty much explains it all. If I can get the phone to cooperate. An impact fee is a one-time charge applied to new construction. The purpose of the fee is to fund capital projects such as roads, parks, schools, jails, fire stations, and other infrastructure that are needed because of the new development. The funds collected cannot be used for operation, maintenance, or repair of capital facilities. So yes, ma'am, you would basically be, with whatever money was available, and it wasn't enough to complete whatever street you decided to pave, as we develop that street, we would be replenishing our impact fee money with the impact fees granted. Under no circumstance would I feel appropriate approving a new house to be built where we didn't have an adequate road. So you're basically making an investment in your future.
Right.
You'll get your money back in the long haul because they're going to pay taxes every year for the life of a house.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Rumwell, I hope we've addressed some of your questions. Further questions, please.
No, those are the only questions I had. I just wanted people to understand kind of how it works. I know that we all probably see it and understand it, but I just wanted to make sure that the public understood as well how the impact fees and stuff like that worked and how the assessment works and how we get the funding up front. Again, the only other question I have is that if an applicant comes forward, what's the time frame for them to build on that lot?
Mr. Taylor, I'm not sure. We are deciding on the street only.
Correct.
And what we're doing there on the street and how we pay for it. And I'm not sure that we can impose a timeline on a particular applicant to make an improvement on, I mean, common sense tells me that once those lots, that they'll be very marketable and there will be some real estate improvements on those lots because of just the market. But I don't know that we can actually force somebody to build a home on the lot. Can we?
No, but
Okay.
when you have an application, we should have some amount of stuff
Right, you would
efficient, so we
expect
should
the
know why their
application to
application- yeah.
indicate.
Correct.
You're right. Right, okay.
So we'll have some level of information and with that application process.
Right, the applicant would be truthful about their intent to improve the lot, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
But we can't actually hold them to that.
No.
Okay. All right.
That's all I had, Madam Mayor. Those
Okay.
are my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner George?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to echo what Commissioner Samora said. I thought it was a perfect introduction and exactly what was going through my mind. I would hesitate to take action when there is not an application before us. And as this city becomes more and more densely populated and fully built out, I think that the original plat design of opening both directions, as much as I don't like it, and I don't like it, I think that certainly circumstances could compel that as being the way to minimize the most impact on all impacted parties. No matter what decision is made, whether it's east-west opening or coming in from the north or from the south, somebody's not going to like the decision. And I think the majority of the beach is going to be sad that, we lose a currently undeveloped parcel when there's not much of that left. But, there are absolutely property rights here at issue, but since no one's going to be happy with whatever decision we're going to make, and there's not an application before us, and given how much the circumstances have changed since 2014, who knows how many changes more there will be before an applicant comes forward. So I would hesitate to take much action without an applicant before us. I think that you, Mayor, hit the nail on the head when you summarized the process here. I'm going to duplicate and repeat my statements the last time this came before us, which is that without a doubt, my solid opinion is that we should not be funding without recoupment the development of this road, because no other property owner in the entire city has ever had the city pay for the road access. It's always been paid for by the developer. I don't have a problem with us funding it with impact fees, provided that there is an assessment, at least for the equivalent portion of the east-west opening. If that's what legal determines, we would have to restrict the recouping on, to the extent they say that we cannot impose the north-south access if we go either of those directions. So, I feel like we did make at least an informal commitment, if not a formal one, to the residents of the 2nd Street regarding creating the option for the 200 block to open from the south if they could get their act together collectively and make that happen. But I recognize being told that, that's not binding. So again, the fact that that's kind of changing as well, all of it just keeps adding back, all of my logic keeps coming back to saying, why push it without an applicant in front of us? So I don't have any questions on it. I think all the questions that were raised earlier clarified things for the record. We are all here. If we were to make a decision, I think the only decision we would be making is to choose what the direction would be, so that the future applicants would already be put on notice on that. But again, they're not here, and seeing how many circumstances have changed over the years, they may continue to change and compel a different option. So for that reason, I'd say let's just do nothing.
Thank you, Commissioner George. I agree that we don't have an applicant and it's not quite ripe for going forward tonight on a decision. However, I would like to kind of go on record that if we go forward and if we do have an applicant and the time is right, is that, and this commission gets to weigh in on that, I would encourage us to do the right thing, to do the street right, to do the logical way, the most economical way, to take a look at the entire street and especially do something to make improvements on 2nd Street for the existing residents to make it safe, and that the city needs to pay for any maintenance on the existing portion of 2nd Street or any improvement it needs, and so that street, when it is opened, that it is a smart street, that we bury the utilities and we do it right. That's my only request to this council, if we do get to consider this, is that we do it right and we protect the green space. So with that, Mr. Taylor, do we need a motion to table it, or just table it, as all the commissioners have indicated they all think that it's not right?
This can be tabled with a consensus.
You can table it by consensus?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have any commissioner that is wanting to object to tabling this item until such time as we have a live applicant? Okay, then we shall table this item from further discussion. And thank you all for coming in and giving us your thoughts tonight from the public. Thank you. All right, the next item is Ocean Walk, or the pipe on Meikler Boulevard. And Mr. Tredick, bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I don't really have a formal presentation, but I just wanted to bring you up to date on some of the things that we have done to improve the drainage and what we're planning to do as we move forward. Since the last meeting, we've finished the cleaning, at least the first cut of the cleaning of Meikler between 16th and 11th Street. It definitely has more conveyance than it had before the cleaning. The vegetation's been cleaned out. About a foot of muck or more has been cleaned out of the bottom. So it's definitely in a lot better shape than it was prior to the rains in June. So I think we'll see, while I'm not going to say that there wouldn't be street flooding in a similar event, it would definitely go down more quickly with that cleaning. That being said, that's, as I've said before, that's not the only problem out there. There are quite a few drainage problems. It's very low, as we've talked about before. So what I have up on the screen are a couple of concepts. The one on the left is, again, very just rough concept. We met with Ms. Kempler, I think it was Thursday or Friday. I had a similar exhibit. It was a little more cartoonish because I did it in Microsoft Paint, but I actually sketched this up in CAD, so it's a little more to scale. And it might be a little hard to read it. On the top, on the very top on the left, and again, I see this as an ultimate solution to the drainage. We won't know the details until we actually complete the survey in that neighborhood. We'll have to go through the whole neighborhood, get elevations of the street, get elevations of every house slab, get elevations of every garage, offsets from the road so we know where the water's going. But just to walk you through my thoughts anyway of where I think we're going. Up in the top we have a connection that goes out to, we have a connection that goes underneath Pope Road. That is, during the rains in June, the water was flowing north. But that being said, in a storm surge, the water could come the other way. So, did I not do something again?
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So we do need to have some sort of backflow prevention element on the north end and on the very south. The pipe that goes down 16th Street goes all the way from the boulevard, goes down to a pond across from City Hall, right over here, across the street on Old Beach. If we don't have backflow prevention and we try to pump the system down, that will backflow into it. We'll be pumping down a good portion of the city's drainage, and that would be counterproductive as well as very expensive. So we need backflow prevention on both ends. In the middle, second down from the top, you'll see I show replace the pipe and inlets. The existing pipe, from what I've been told, and we don't have a survey of it yet, has a little bit of a hump in it, so it doesn't flow too well to Meikler. Also, the inlets aren't very deep. They're fairly shallow, and the pipe probably needs to be upsized because of the very little bit of slope on it. On the south end, right to the left of where it says backflow prevention, you notice I'm showing a new pipe and inlets to try to collect more drainage from the neighborhood and take it over to Meikler. That is definitely has to be analyzed before. That's a concept at best at this point, but I believe that's approximately where it would go. The pipe network may go up the road a little bit, pick up any low spots. Typically when you're dealing with, you don't want to do too far of a run or you're going to get ponding. So the final piece of that concept would be a stormwater pump station, which would be somewhere along Meikler. The location will be determined, but it might make sense to have it somewhere midway between the two connections, the two pipe connections, that would tie into the Meikler pipe. So what we would essentially do is pump down the water out of the Meikler pipe and pump it into the pipe on 16th Street, or pump it south of the backflow structure, I should say. And by doing that, we can keep the Meikler pipe virtually empty in advance of a storm. So we'll be able to capture all of that rainfall before the rain hits in that pipe system. And that is a large pipe. And I know it's not as big as the ditch, but it's, 29 by 42, I believe, elliptical concrete pipe. It's a big pipe, and it holds quite a bit of water. And then if it's kept pumped down, we can get a lot of storage in that. So that being said, I mean, we can develop a project that achieves these things. The next step in analyzing it is how much do we want to pump? Do we want to protect all street flooding, or is our goal to protect the houses? I think, keeping the street from ever flooding while possible is probably not cost effective. It's very low, and in order to pump a 25-year storm and keep that street dry is going to be pretty expensive. That being said, a smaller system which keeps the street passable, protects the properties, might be in order somewhere in between. And I don't have numbers on all that yet, but I can tell a pump station that's large is going to cost in the hundreds of thousands. A pump station that's a little more smaller and more designed just to protect the houses and keep the streets passable is going to cost quite a bit less. So that's some of the long-term thinking. It may include under-drain systems also. I don't have them on the sketch, to try to keep the groundwater under control in the area so that we don't get standing water in yards for long periods of time. And that's kind of where I want to go long-term. That's a project I want to build into the budget long-term. Short-term, I've already met with our engineer on this and got some concepts. Basically, it's pretty simple. We have an existing pipe that runs from Lee Drive to Michler Drive. All we really need is some backflow prevention and a pump to pump the water down. If we can do that, we can deal with it in the short term. It's going to be a little manually labor intensive to do that. We don't have, two things we could do. We can mobilize portable pumps right now and put a board in, block that pipe, and that's what we were planning to do this weekend when we thought we were going to get a lot of rain. We were ready, we had the pumps on the trucks at Public Works. We were ready to deploy them to Lee Drive if necessary, but we fortunately didn't have to because the rainfall forecast stayed pretty low and then it got less and less as time went on. So we didn't have to deploy them. Interim though, the need to deploy them would be better if we could put in a temporary pump station and a backflow prevention right there at that structure so that we could pump the water out quickly and not have to send someone out. It would be set up to automatically go on and off when the water reached a certain elevation and pump their system down. So I think an interim project can be developed that goes a long way towards helping them, but is not the ultimate fix. And that's kind of the path that I'm on right now. Happy to take any questions.
I just have one. I'm going to turn it over to the other commissioners. When the rain hits the ground where the pipe is underneath, there are places that will let that water go into the pipe.
Yes, and that's the underdrain system that I'm talking about. We would have sock pipe, they call it. It would be in a trench of rock. It would be perforated pipe. The water would go from the ground into that pipe, then it would drain into the drainage structures and then be pumped out.
Okay, and because the homes are lower, and what do you have in mind that prevent the water, will encourage the water to go into the pipe to be pumped and kept pumped and clean versus just rolling down the hill to the backyards of the residents?
There are some areas that it might be a little tricky because there's low spots. I know Ms. Kempler's yard has a low spot on the side. That's a place we'd put on under drains. You could also tie a yard drain into it if you needed to let that water go into that system. So there are some options there for tie-ins from yards. The other thing would be long-term, this may involve going to a curb and gutter system versus a swale system. Right now, it's a swale system that really hasn't worked as a swale system in quite some time. The driveways are valleyed, but the dirt in between is quite a bit higher than the driveway, so the driveway aprons all hold water. And there's big trees in a few spots that are blocking any sort of reconstruction of the swale. You'd have to take the trees out. So we'll have to look at that, but one option would be to direct the runoff to the inlets in the curb, and thus you don't really worry so much about it getting in the yards. There'll still be some that gets in the yard, so that falls off roofs and things, but hopefully that will perk in if we improve the groundwater lower the groundwater table a little bit with those under drains.
Okay. I'm going to go to Commissioner questions before we go to public comment. Commissioner Rumwell, do you have questions?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. I think a couple things. You know, I think the plan is fantastic. I think that we need to look at that. I think we need to clearly update our 2004 drainage study that we did. You know, it's 16 years old. I think we need to look at that and revise that. You know, I empathize with the folks on Lee Drive and Ocean Walk. I think there's always been a little bit of an issue, but I think with this now has become a bigger issue. And so my fear is that if we don't do something short-term, our long-term problems are going to get worse. So I'm going to ask what the consensus of the board is, because obviously we can't speak until now, but I wanted to ask if it was prudent for us to write a letter, have our attorney write a letter to the engineer and to the people who installed the ditch, the pipe on the ditch, and just have them come out, not a accusatory, nothing that is of any sense causing any problems, but I think to have them write a letter and just say, hey, we've had these problems since the pipe has been installed. Could you all please come out and verify to make sure everything is there? And I think that would do good for both us as a city, because at the end of the day, if the pipe's wrong, then I think we need to take the pipe out. If the pipe's right, then why is it not working correctly? And so I think getting the engineer, getting the company who came in and installed it would be a very good next step. Mr. Tredick has done an outstanding job, a timely job, getting the ditches cleared out, but I still think we have a long-term problem. So I'm asking the consensus of the board, my fellow commissioners, if you all agree in writing a letter to the engineer and to the company who installed the pipe to say, hey, look, these are the problems we have. Could you please come out and take a look at it?
Mr. Tredick, do you want to respond to that?
We can certainly write a letter to the engineer and the contractor. The plans were built, or the construction was per the plans. That is, it was consistent with what was on the plans. The elevations and everything checked out within tolerances. So that's, from the construction standpoint, I don't really see that there's any potential issue there with the contractor. And the modeling checks out, and the engineer has responded via email. It's informal at this point.
Okay.
But I've asked him about this and told him that he would need to give me some answers to be able to defend his design, and he sent an email that was actually pretty well defended the design, but it was informal. So I can ask him to formalize that and make a response.
Perhaps you and the attorney can get with a contract and Commissioner Rumwell and take a look at everything and write a more formal letter based on our problems and what you see, and you know, look at the contract and everything and pinpoint things more specifically and see what they say.
I mean, we can certainly do that, sure.
Okay, that way we do get a formal response from them on the plans, the design, the construction, and let them know we're having some problems. Commissioner Rumwell, anything else?
Mayor, and that was to your point, sorry for interrupting, it's delayed here for me to hear you, so I apologize if I ever talk over any of the commissioners. We've got that kind of delay. And the only reason why I have my concern, Madam Mayor, is that remember at the end of last year, they came to us because there was an overage that we needed to do, that they missed 250 linear feet of pipe in that. So in the back of my mind, I'm concerned that if they miss something of that magnitude, it could be something very small. It could be just a sock drain, or it could be something where the groundwater is not getting into the pipe. I mean, it could be a very fixable issue, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same playing field, and I think the people at Lee Drive would appreciate, you know, something. I think from talking to them, I'm sure as everybody else has, you know, they're concerned. You know, I mean, I think we all got emails over the weekend from one lady on Lee Drive that was concerned that is it going to flood? Is the storm? Are we going to make sure we're going to put sand up? And I think that there's an added sense of urgency, and I just don't want us to drop the ball on this. I want to continue. And again, Mr. Tredick has done an outstanding job of really pushing this down, getting it done faster than I've seen a lot of governments work in the past. So I applaud Mr. Tredick to really continue this, but I think we're at the next step, Madam Mayor, where we need to go a step further.
Okay. Anything further, Commissioner?
Not right now, thank you.
Commissioner George, questions for Mr. Tredick?
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of building on what Commissioner Rumrell was talking about with, the missing 250 feet, I was wondering if we had independent quality control on site to verify that we had the correct diameter pipe installed.
We did. I want to address the length of the pipe issue because it's come up twice now. That was a call-out error that the contractor made in his bid. Basically, it was on the plans, and because of the way the plans were structured, and I don't remember the exact details, I remember talking to the commission about it, it didn't carry forward into his tabulation, and it was excluded from the bottom line, basically. And it was, after reviewing that, it was clear that they intended to do it, but it was a tabulation error. Typically, they still would have been the low bidder. I remember that too, even if that pipe had showed up in the bid form, that length of pipe. Typically with a calculation error like that, it's corrected. What would have happened in that situation, if it had been caught, is we would have notified them of the discrepancy. They would have adjusted their bid, and if they were no longer the low bidder, they wouldn't have got the bid. If they were the low bidder, they still would have got the bid. So it didn't really change anything. Yes, it was a mistake. Absolutely was a mistake that they missed that length of pipe in their tabulation, but it was clearly on the plans.
And is this the person who designed the plan for the Michler pipe and the person or the company who installed it, the contractor, are they the same?
No, they're different companies.
Two different companies. Okay. All right. Further questions, Commissioner George?
Thank you, Mayor. You started on one of them, but I'm going to take it a step further. My next question is whether the engineer who designed the master plan is the same who designed this particular project.
The engineer is. The name of the firm has changed over the years, but the engineer is the same.
Okay. I do think that it sounds like maybe the contractor, if the job was done right, then maybe they don't have much liability, although I do still think their input is a great suggestion to have, although it looks like you've done a wonderful job coming up with something here. I kind of defer to you on whether that would serve us very well. But we need to have our city attorney dig into the contract, as you said, Mayor, as well as the plan itself. I'm just wondering, I know we've had this plan for a long time, but I don't know if because we didn't implement this section, if the design itself was flawed, would that initial writer of the plan, designer of the plan, would they bear any liability on this? So I would just pose that question to the city attorney. Obviously, there are solutions available, but we're worried about the ultimate cost. I don't think that should slow us down if we can come up with the funds to implement the improvements. And so that's kind of leading into my next question. I may have missed the cost estimates. Mr. Tredick, do you have cost estimates for these yet?
No, we're not that far along yet.
And did you say when, or could you tell me when you would have a cost estimate, at least for the interim plan, as well as the conceptual?
I think certainly by the next commission meeting I can have that.
Okay.
The ultimate plan, I won't have it. It'll be a little bit of a guess on the ultimate plan because I don't have the survey. Until I have the survey, I can't really get a preliminary plan that I can put together and count on a cost estimate that would be with any margin of error. Typically, I'd have to put a pretty large contingency in that estimate. The interim plan, I could definitely have a tighter estimate for you by the next meeting.
Okay, and what about disruption to the residents for the improvements being installed as you have them presented here? Will there be much disruption for them?
Well, there certainly will be some disruption. You know, we'll work during the daytime, so there won't be nighttime work. We will try to minimize that disruption to the maximum extent we can, but there's going to be, depending upon what we do, for the interim there'll be very little disruption because most of the work would happen out at Michler. But for the ultimate plan, a lot of work would be done in the neighborhood, and you can't do that without causing a little bit of problems with traffic and sometimes with having to dig up yards and replace driveways and that sort of thing. So there's always going to be some disruption when you do a aggressive plan.
Okay, and do you feel that these improvements will be able to manage a greater capacity than the removal of the pipe that was installed?
I firmly believe that the installed pipe is not the problem for the flow, for the capacity. It was designed and it's modeled to convey the water that comes off to the same degree that the ditch could. So with the changes that I'd like to see implemented in the neighborhood, I think the pipe will work just fine. In fact, it's going to be an important component of the overall system. If we can make some tweaks to provide some additional storage in that pipe, I think that's definitely a good path. And there's also another thing we've talked to the engineer about, and I've talked with my staff about, is some options to get the water in the 16th Street system to drain more quickly down to the Mizell Pond. And right now it's limited because of the control structure in the private pond across the street. There are some ways that could be alleviated. We're looking at either bypassing that, and so we just have to think our way through this and look at all the options, because if we can control this elevation of the water with our master pump station that we're planning to build at Mizell by increased conveyance, then that might be a way to avoid having to double pump water. So, I mean, those are some of the things of thought that has to go into the long-term plan. That's why we have to take our steps to that and develop an interim plan that solves the problem to at least a satisfactory degree for now.
Have you considered in the design of the improvements some kind of a holding pond? Because I know one of the ongoing articulated concerns is just the sheer reduction in volume capacity. And I think that's a difficult point to argue against, given the enclosure of the ditch when we have a storm event like what we've seen here, where the intercoastal fills up. And so our whole system fills up. I appreciate the functional benefit of the backflow protectors, but still we'd be left with water, a volume of water around these homes. So is there any location, have you looked for any possible nearby locations for that sort of a larger solution to this problem?
I have not done a detailed analysis of that, but I don't believe we would find much. The pipe, if we keep it essentially pumped out most of the time, will provide quite a bit of volume, 1,400 feet of 36-inch equivalent pipe. I forget the number, I think it's like 0.2 acre feet or a little more, maybe a quarter of an acre foot of storage in that pipe, plus the structure. So it's not huge, but it's measurable, and it will make a difference. I think the important thing is that we get the conveyance working all the way down to the Mizell Pond. We have a 13-acre pond down there that can handle this water. We just have to get it to that pond. We're building a $2.5 million pump station that can pump this water. So it's essential that we improve our conveyance of the stormwater to that pond. And, you know, and it's permitted to treat this water. So I think it's important that we really focus on conveyance rather than storage in a lot of these places.
So if you could just, to that point, refresh my recollection about the Mizell Pond and the pump stations that we're improving with the disaster funds from FEMA. My recollection is that we're still limited in terms of capacity due to whatever the water level is in the intercoastal. So if we have, a high tide hurricane storm event like we've seen here in the past, we would still be limited in how much capacity we can manage. But I know we were working on increasing that capacity. Can you speak to those questions on that for me, please?
I can. On the Mizell Pond, the weir is currently temporary weir, I should say, the emergency weir, the sheet pile weir we had to put in after the old one was damaged, is at 3.3, elevation 3.3. The proposed weir will be almost 4 feet higher than that at elevation 7. It will be designed to hold back a storm surge that we would have seen with something like Hurricane Matthew. So it's a significant improvement in resiliency and storm surge protection. The pumps are currently, we have 225 cubic feet per second pumps out there. I think if I remember correctly, we're going to have around 120 cubic feet per second maximum capacity when the new pump station is built, so we'll more than double the pumping capacity. And that's important because we still have to be able to provide that flow when our weir is higher. It's also, as the water is not always going to be staged up because of storm surge, it also has valves that allow the water to go out gravity, so we don't have to pump all the time. So essentially our drainage capability of that pond is at least the same, maybe a little greater than what it would have been, and it's certainly a lot better in a storm surge situation.
Well, I think the concern is that if it's going to be the same, it won't be enough with the ditch being covered in. Because the ditch covered still holds less volume than it did uncovered, presuming it was clean, right? And I think that's part of the primary argument of a lot of the property owners here. So we would need greater capacity if we're relying exclusively on the Mizell Pond. But, I'm not an expert in these things. I just raise it so that you can continue to reflect on these and better inform us ways to articulate responses to these concerns and make sure that we're substantively addressing them as well. But for now, I think that's probably it for my questions. And thank you for working on it this far. And maybe we'll have even some, more detail. You know what I would love to see? I don't know if we have the capacity without spending a whole lot of money, but do we have any software that could show us the volume spread of water in this area with the pumps working and the Mizell capacity that you've talked about based upon different storm events and water accumulation events?
I do not have the
software. Or is
software.
that way far beyond our small cities' resources?
At this time, I don't have software that would show that.
Okay. I tried to follow your articulated standards on how much water can move, but for me as a layperson not experienced as an engineer in these areas, it's difficult to conceptualize. So anyway.
Well, I might be able to just clarify something. The pond that's right across Old Beach Road, the private pond that 16th Street water is draining into, that pond after the rains in early June, that pond elevation was about 1.5 to 2 feet higher than the pond in Lakeside Park. So there's a huge difference in water elevation there. If we can get that water to the Mizell Pond, and that's my point, if we can get it to the pond and out of the neighborhoods, we can do a lot to solve these drainage problems. And that's why I was talking about conveyance. We need to move that water out of the neighborhoods.
Okay. Well, that sounds absolutely right on point. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time for the questions, Mayor.
Mr. Tredick, some of the questions that Commissioner George has asked are really good. I don't have that expertise, but would our engineer be able to help us out and address some of this, or have the software?
Our engineer certainly has the software to model it.
Okay.
It's done with it's called interconnected pond routing. It's a software that's a combination of nodes and links being pipes and nodes being basins. And it calculates the stage for the whole storm. You run a storm through it, it runs all the water through the pipes and calculates the elevation of the water in the various locations. It's not necessarily graphical, but it can be done in a graphical way. But we don't have that software.
Okay.
That's several thousand, I think, subscription of, I think Anthony looked into the price of that. It's not over there, but
Okay.
it's a few $1,000s, I think, a year or
Okay.
something like
Well,
that.
maybe in their effort to help us address this together, that maybe they can help with some of the things that, we don't have the software capacity to do, so.
Well, and what Commissioner Rumrell said is exactly right. We do need to update our drainage master plan.
Oh, yes, well, that's
When we
given.
finish the vulnerability assessment, or even parallel to it, we will have a lot of this information that allows us to do that.
Okay.
We'll have all of our vulnerabilities, all of our connections to the Matanzas River, to Salt Run. There's some connections up there from Pope Road. We'll have a much better understanding of all this, and at that point, we can plug projects into that revised model and improve subbasins, like something like Ocean Walk, and we have many other ones. Ocean Walk's not the only one. We can plug improvements in and see how they work and design improvements for a lot of areas that way. So the vulnerability study is a big first step. I want to follow it with an update to the master plan.
Okay. Commissioner Samora, are you ready for questions?
I am. Mr. Tredick, thank you for delving into this topic so deeply and as quickly as you have. I'm assuming the two different plans that you've presented tonight, you've come up with these, not the engineer? Is that correct?
I have. In conversation with the engineer about the ones, the interim plan, what he just sent me, I think it was yesterday or today, was a concept of a wet well right there. I could point to it, but then the people remotely can't see it. But basically putting in a new structure here, putting in a pump and pumping into the Michler system, that wouldn't require the backflow prevention at this time because it would pump essentially over the hill into the pipe. But again, that's not the ultimate solution. That's just
right.
In the meantime, though, until we do that, we'll do it with pumps we have on and a sheet of plywood to block the flow.
And it's relieving to hear that you did have a short-term solution in case of a storm event, that we had some pipes that we could, or some pumps that we could pump the water out of the low-lying areas there. So that's brings some level of relief that at least we did have a plan in place. Question for you on the long-term plan, do we have the easements necessary if we want to put new pipes into that neighborhood?
We do not yet.
We do not, so we'd have to get the easements.
We would have to get easements, especially, we may have an easement, although I'm not 100% certain if we even have an easement on an existing pipe. I assume we have an easement, but I haven't done the research yet, and it's not on the plat. The pipe on the south that I'm proposing, we definitely would need an easement for.
Okay, very good. And I want to agree 100% with what Commissioner Rumrell brought up. As a city, we pay for services to the engineer to design this. The engineers have insurance for errors, omissions, things like that. We rely on their professional expertise so that we as lay people are not designing this type of a system. People in the neighborhood aren't designing this type of a system. It's an engineer who has insurance for things like this. If they happen to screw up something, we need to get them involved formally, not informally. I'm a little bit concerned that even that I don't want to say I'm concerned that we haven't consulted them on the plans that you've come up with, but I would be concerned about implementing things like backflow prevention and pumping stormwater and stormwater pump stations into a pipe that may not be designed for it. I'd be worried about some adverse effects, quite frankly, if we don't engage the engineer and say, can the system that we put in handle a new inlet pipe at the south end, things like that. So I absolutely think it's time to engage them formally, kind of put them on notice, we want to confirm that everything was done correctly, and we want their verification that if we do go ahead and make some other modifications to improve the drainage of Lee Drive, that it's not going to have an even worse adverse effect. So and that's all I really have to say about that. I think it's time to get them involved.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Tredick, for taking this monster by the horns and wrestling it as much as you have. Your timeliness and your approach is greatly appreciated. I would agree with Commissioner Rumwell and Commissioner Samora. I think that it's time to get involved. I mean, we have an obligation as to our city to make sure that things were done correctly. And to check into that. I also think that Commissioner George brought up some very, very pertinent points. I would also like to reiterate that we definitely, and I'm glad that you are looking into getting an updated drainage plan. This is not the only problem area that we have in our community. During Hurricane Matthew and then during Irma, we had 2 other little neighborhoods that had significant water issues. So I'm happy to know that that's on the agenda for you to get the updated drainage plan done. Again, I would just like to thank your work so far, and I love your approach that you immediately recognized that there was something you could do temporarily while we're looking into this further so that we can make a plan that will work in the long run. So thank you very much for your work.
Before we go to public comment, I want to remind everyone that this is an update from Mr. Tredick. It is not to come up with a solution right now, but Mr. Tredick, would you just, before we go to public comment, because I know anticipating the fear and concerns that the neighbors have if we do have a storm event, what again is your temporary fix? How quick can you do it? What do you have in mind to protect them right now?
So what we were planning to do this last weekend, if the rains came, we had people working on the weekend because of the threat of the storm. We actually finished working on the ditch, scooping out the muck on Sunday, or Saturday that is. So we finished that length beforehand. What we were planning to do is if the rainfall forecast showed, at the time it was forecasting 2 to 4 inches. I was watching that very closely. If anything changed, we would have gone out, blocked off and we wouldn't have done it immediately, we would have done it at the right point, blocked off the flow and pumped down from the existing inlets to the Michler pipe. We have some smaller pumps, they're not large pumps, but they could have been a benefit and kept up with 2 to 4 inches. They wouldn't have kept up with 8-inch rain. So, I was watching that very closely. I just didn't have the equipment to deal with that, but we had one reserved if we needed it. We had a 6-inch pump reserved. We didn't need to pull the trigger on that because the rainfall estimates stayed low. And they kept going down. They went to 1 to 3 a little later, and it turned out we got almost nothing. But we were ready to act on that, and so we took a staged approach. We didn't want to order a pump for $1,000 and rent it and then not use it. So we have smaller pumps that we had ready to go. That being said, in hurricane season, we could have a hurricane coming up with drop 6 or 8 or 10 inches of rain on us. So we need to move quickly on this interim plan and have that ability to pump that down without having to send a person out in the field in the middle of a storm. So that's what I'm going to push for right now. I can probably put something together in pretty short order. Of course, there's the funding aspect of it. And I'll have to work closely with Patty on that to make sure we don't overshoot and have the money to do it. But at the same time, there are things we can do in the next month or two to take out the human element there where we have to run out there in the middle of a storm and turn a pump on or move a pipe or something like that. So that's where we are now while we work towards the long-term solution.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tredick. Before we go to public comment, everyone is welcome. You are welcome to come up to the podium and comment. You have 2 minutes. It is not a back and forth discussion with Mr. Tredick or the commissioners at this point. It is your opportunity to comment, and then we will keep you updated. So with that, we'll go to public comment.
Travis Tabor.
Hi. My name is Travis Tabor. I'm from 15 Lee Drive. And exactly 29 years ago today, I was getting married.
Congratulations.
I thought it was so important, and we're trying to show you just how important this is to all of us, because it's our houses that are going to be underwater. Not yours, ours. And we've always had the same problems that everybody has, but it was exacerbated by this addition that we've gotten. And you all have to understand the anxiety that it puts on people that live there. You know, if we gotten 8 inches, no, we couldn't have handled it. Well, if that thing had come another 100 miles east, I wouldn't be sitting here being very civil right now, because we'd all probably have water in our homes. And I saw what the water damage did, 5 inches, much less anything else. So it's pretty easy to sit there and say, it doesn't matter that much and we're doing what we can. But you've got 30 people over on the other side too. And we've had to wait 2 hours just to even talk. So on behalf of all of them and myself, please don't take this as just, oh yeah, it's another project. This isn't a Second Street thing that can just be kicked down the road. This is now. And 100 miles on a hurricane is not much leeway. So I don't think you all would look at, if it was your neighborhood, would you? Thank you. Anybody else?
Clarissa Jones.
You want to call the next one too, just
Yep.
get them lined.
The next speaker will be Tasha Stanton. Clarissa Jones.
Where am I standing? Here? Hello, Clarissa Jones, 46 Lee Drive. I don't have much to say. I cannot top my previous neighbor. So I just thank you all for listening to us, and I anticipate your speedy action and to the best outcome. Thank you. One more thing. I do represent another neighbor, I must say, Gail Conkle. She lives at 9 Lee Drive. Because of her comorbidity, she could not be here, but she has been flooded twice since she has lived at this address and is angsting on a daily basis. I can't imagine living in her body this past weekend and in her mind. So think of her too. Thank you.
Tasha Stanton, and the next speaker will be Cindy Pages. Terrible with names. I'm so sorry.
Hi, and thank you. Thank you for all of
Your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Tasha Stanton, 44 Lee Drive, 32080. Thank you for all your time and attention. I know it's a lot of work. I appreciate it. Obviously I want this to stay front of mind, but so my observation, and I went out right after the pipe was put in, something changed. I don't know what, but the flow of the water during the first real rain was different than it was before. So in some way, that pipe, the ditch being gone and the pipe being there, did change the flow of the water. And you've seen it with our neighbors and all. So, I question that it's not changed it, because I saw with my own eyes. I'm luckily not as threatened as some, today, who knows, on a different day. So there's that, and then there's something I'm not sure of, but I'll bring it up. We have a relatively new large development on the other side of Meikler, but I'm not sure if they drain into the same ditch or pipe that we do. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's the one where everybody used to take their bicycles on the little dunes, if you've lived here a long time.
Ocean Ridge.
Ocean Ridge, thank you. Anyways, it's lovely. It's a lovely development, and I imagine they paid their impact fees, and I don't know if they're tied into the water, but the timing is similar to, the pipe that, and if that added a burden, maybe that would get you some money, I don't know. And I have a concern about, so we have the engineering group that did this. There's so much money involved. I would think that a second opinion of an outside engineer might not be a bad idea if you're talking about a lot of money to solve the problem. I applaud the work. I'm done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cindy Pagius? I'm so sorry about mispronouncing your name. The next speaker will be James Doherty.
Bink and Cindy Degefoss, 34 Lee Drive, Ocean Walk. We're just here to support the neighbors that are up. You got the whole room full of them over there. With the same concern, there is a problem. There was not a problem before. So the ditch system obviously does not work. My opinion, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what works, what doesn't work. We can argue back and forth over what needs to be done. The only thing I do know is that there was no problem before, there's a problem now. And I believe that throwing money after a bad thing is not a good thing for me. I think the ditch needs to come out. There was no problem before. Thank you very much. How about you?
Ditto.
James Doherty, and the next speaker will be Karen Kempler.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Tredick. My name is James Doherty, 11 Lee Drive. I've been here for 20 years, and so that drain that we keep talking about that goes into Meikler, I'm one of the guys that lives next to that. So I've watched the water coming up and down, and I agree with what everyone else is beating this dead horse, that it did change, it's worse, it's not better. So to say the pipe works fine, the pipe probably conveys water as advertised. It's my opinion that none of the water on Lee Drive can get to the pipe. And the reason I say that is I took a yardstick and measured the water levels, specifically where, Mr. Tredick, I know I'm not talking to you, but I just want you to look into it if you could. The pipe that hooks into the Meikler pipe, I believe is about 6 inches below the rest of the pipe. And so we've got about this much, capacity on that pipe. And we know it's been lined and it's smaller than it was originally. And just that whole grading system is just not right. And I think you would probably agree. The other thing is, I looked at the permit when this was originally pulled, and the drainage, the surface drainage calculations, if you could ask the engineer, because on the map that they show, it only talks about the westernmost houses on the map. And the map is labeled Surface Area Calculations Map. So my question is, Ocean Walk drainage essentially runs all to the west, not just the western side, but the eastern side as well, pretty much goes through all that, because it passes through my yard and under my house through the crawl space this deep during high rain events. So I don't know if they really calculated that, and that's why I wonder. So if you think about it, all that surface area is going through one, I forget if it's 18-inch, 20-inch pipe. And if you could look into it and verify it, might be worth your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Kempler, and the next speaker will be Mark Kempler.
Hello, my name is Karen Kempler, and I live at 30 Lee Drive.
As I said before, my husband and I have lived there since June of 1986. I have looked at the master drainage plan of 2004, and in it, it says that this is Project 4, and the purpose of the project is to improve drainage in the area north of 11th Street to Pope Road by piping the existing ditch. It seems to me that so why would a pipe be installed at great cost without taking into account the drainage from Ocean Walk? Because we were told that the pipe was put in for erosion purposes. I could not find any reference to Ocean Walk in this 2004 plan, even though we have heard statements in the past few months that our neighborhood has some of the lowest elevations in the city. Making a decision in 2018 to put a pipe in based on a storm drainage master plan from 2004, this just seems crazy to me. Lee Drive is still retaining a great deal of groundwater. Last week, cable crews were in Ocean Walk installing new lines at the north end. They were digging approximately an 8-inch trench, and these trenches were filled with water. Drainage at the north end of Lee Drive, where flooding has been a problem, has been made worse by the installation of the pipe, and the pipe has also created a drainage problem now for the southern end of Lee Drive. The pipe as installed is not draining our neighborhood, and I think evidence of this is the short-term solution for our neighborhood, which I appreciate, Mr. Tredick, pumps and pumping the water into the grates on Michler. If you are truly operating from a storm drainage plan for 2004, I think we can all agree that a lot has changed in St. Augustine Beach in the last 15 years. It not only seems short-sighted to me, but an incredible lack of vision on the part of the city of St. Augustine Beach. I think we as residents of St. Augustine Beach are going to suffer for this short-sightedness if you don't come up with a master plan that looks to the future. Thank you.
Mark Kempler, and the next speaker will be Phil Wilson.
Hi, my name is Mark Kempler. I live at 30 Lee Drive with Karen. We've lived there for 34 years. I'm going to take a different tact. What I didn't understand is why we were never asked or notified. The first we found out about the project was we heard banging outside our window, and we looked out, and Karen went out and talked to the people with the machines, and I don't understand. 2nd Street, all 16 owners were asked. I don't know the legalities of this, but it is a pretty odd thing. The other thing the ditch did for us was 60 homes, 34 years, 1 robbery at the very front. Now, people just walk through our property. Next door to me is a 94-year-old woman, lives by herself. My other side is another elderly widow, and people could just walk through the neighborhood. We never had cop cars ride around our neighborhood. It wasn't necessary. Now, that's also, without the ditch there, we're definitely in more danger. 2 things. One of the commissioners has said about never wanting to start without having the funds. There was Plan A and Plan B. Putting in the pipe was Plan B. Plan A was not done. So anyway, also the fact is, 3 of the commissioners have responded. My wife's been writing. My wife's been on television. We've been first front page of the record. And only 3 commissioners have been responding. All 5 have been talking today, which is real good. I'm glad that everybody's involved. I think Mr. Tredick has done an admirable job. He's not to blame. Definitely looking back at the engineer and seeing what happened is definitely, I'm not even talking about the legality. And a second opinion, of course, would cost money. Running out of time. Anyway, obviously we're concerned. My home is probably in the most danger. The irony is that the flood zones got changed. We now went into a better flood zone with a 1 out of 100 chance of getting flooded. And I would, if any of you want to bet me 3 to 1, I will tell you we'll get flooded at the next storm.
Thank you. Thank you. Richard Ayoub, A-Y-O-U-B. Richard Ayoub. And the next speaker will be Phil Wilson. I think I mixed those up again. Richard from 712 Michler.
You may have left already.
Okay, I'll set that up. I'll set that one on the side. Thank you so much. Phil Wilson, and then the next speaker will be Raphael Saylor.
Hi, I'm Phil Wilson, 14 Lee Drive. We've lived there for 14 years or 13 years. We live right next to the main drain that goes from Pope over to Michler Boulevard. And, you know, we've seen some improvements. The stormwater system and everything is great. They've tried. What they did last time didn't seem to have a lot of effect. I love the new ditch or the new pipe. We had rattlesnakes and moccasins and rats and the stench and mosquitoes for years. It was horrible. The pipes are moving in the right direction. Do I think that it's better or worse? I live right there. I see every time it rains. It might be a little worse. It's really hard. I'm not studying how much the rainfall is every time. At the other end of the neighborhood, apparently it's gotten worse. I don't know. I don't sit in front of that, but I do sit next to that drainage ditch for 13 years. And it doesn't work. It never has. Everyone else is just starting to experience what I've experienced for the last 13 years. Every time, I mean, I can't cut my grass most of the time because, the lawnmower just sinks into it. And it definitely is an issue. It needs to be addressed. And I personally, and I'm not an engineer, I don't do stormwater for a living, but I think where we're going is headed in the right direction. I think we need to move the water out of that neighborhood. And like they were saying, if you dig down a foot in my front yard, it's a swimming pool. And that's just, we're very low. So getting the water out of that neighborhood is the way to go, I personally believe. And filling in that, digging up the ditch again behind on Michler is crazy talk. That was nasty. It didn't have any huge capacity. I jumped in it to grab a cat. My kids fell in it. It was only a foot deep most of the time. Did it have any huge capacity beyond the pipe? I don't believe it did. Some, yes, but was it going to solve our problems to dig it back out? Well, maybe some of theirs, but not long-term mine, and not the people that live next to that great. So the direction we're heading, I'm all for it. I think it's great. I just like to see a lot more money spent on it and do it like now, not in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Raphael Saylor, so sorry about the names. And the next speaker will be Matt Torito.
Raphael Saylor, 27 Lee Drive. Some of the points that I was going to talk about was already talked about, so I won't reiterate those things, so I won't waste your time. Thank you for the commissioners and the mayors that have come out to Ocean Walk. I appreciate it. For the other people that haven't come out or hasn't responded, I wish you would have. Don't understand why you haven't. Do we have an issue now? Yes, we do have an issue. How it's been discussed by Bill, thank you for trying to solve the problems and everything. As I've heard, it seems like we have done things backwards. We're talking about stoppage pipes, pumping things out to ponds, doing everything else at. To me, it seems they should have been in place before the pipe went in. If that doesn't make sense, I don't know how to explain it to you any better. Those pumps should have been in before the pipes went in. How else can I address that? Letters that didn't come to the homeowners. I know I didn't get one. I've been there for 5 years. Other homeowners are getting letters when you guys are doing things, and we have a plat that our drainage was for the drainage ditches. Why that wasn't actually assessed for water coming out of those pipes to wherever we're supposed to be going, I still don't understand. One other thing was Tasha sent everyone an email about a Title 21 saying if any person would stop drainage, it would be a felony. You guys stopped our drainage. Take into consideration, if we did it, we'd be charged and we would have to do things. Pay the consequences. For me, easiest solution is take out the pipe, put it back, start square one. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Turito, and the next speaker will be Earl Ward.
Hello. I'm Matt Turito, 12 Lee Drive. I had a few points to talk about. Mr. Tredick got all of them. I don't know him. I think he's spot on with what his plan is. So my house is one of the higher houses on the west side of Lee Drive, and I think the most important thing is the houses that have flooded or come close to flooding. Since the pipers went in, the drainage is much worse. The June 6th storm, we had significant water, the most water I've seen since I lived there, but I moved after Matthew. So I think his idea, I was a builder, developer for 20 years. I think his idea about pumping it out, backflow preventers, those are all things on my list. I think that pretty much solves the problem. We've always had a problem, so taking the pipe out and putting the ditch back just really puts the problem right back where it was. Phil Wilson, who was here, Jim, who was here, their yards have always been a swamp. So getting that water out of there, I think, is the most important thing. I think he's right on track. The pumps aren't there. They weren't there, but there's a fix to it, and I think the pumps are a fix. So I think that's a good one. Now, the other thing is, with the plan with the under drain, my house would be affected on on 3 sides, 3 of the 4 sides of my property. I would have under drain in the front yard, under drain in the side yard, under drain in the backyard. So I'd just like to know what the final product would be. I have survey on here and other things. You've already addressed that. So I just want to say I appreciate it. I think you all are doing a good job, and I appreciate you listening to everyone. That's about it. So thank you, and I look forward to it, see what's going on. But I think there is a pretty simple fix to what we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Earl Ward, and the next speaker will be Dow Stewart.
Thank you. I'm Earl Ward, number 10 Lee Drive, Ocean Walk. I've been there since 1993, and in the 27 years that we've been in Ocean Walk, we have had numerous situations with flooding, especially at our end of the street, which is the north end. After Hurricane Matthew, the houses that were the most affected after the hurricane were all on our end of the street. The neighbors at the other end of the street, bless their hearts, they haven't really had the issues that we have until this pipe has gone in. We understand that the issues that have come up since the pipe is definitely worse. It's worse for them, it's worse for us, it's not any better for any of us. In my situation, before the pipe on Michler went in, we had water standing in our front yard, we had water standing in our backyard where the pipe is now, and there's no longer a problem. We lost access to about 3 or 4 feet of our property in the back because of the erosion of the ditch, which was one of the things that I think moved along the process of getting the pipe installed, which was part of the 2004 master plan. So putting that pipe in was just one piece of the puzzle that was supposed to happen anyway a long time ago, and I think Mr. Tredick's plan to put those pumps in is another portion that's like phase 2, as far as I'm concerned, of getting the water out. Either way, the one thing that we can all agree on is that the water has to be moved out of our neighborhood and moved somewhere else. Look at Davis Shores, look at everything that they went through after Hurricane Matthew. We're going through exactly the same thing. And a lot of the work that they did in Davis Shores needs to be done here before the next storm happens and before the same houses get flooded out. So my plan has always been to do exactly what Mr. Tredick was saying, and that is install the pumps. You can put it right behind my house as far as I'm concerned. I don't care about the noise. I just want the water out of there, and I want it done sooner rather than later. And I think it's a long time coming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dow Stewart, and the next speaker will be Nancy Lorch. Nancy Lorch, and the next speaker will be Lawrence Humphrey.
Hi, my name is Nancy Lorch, and I live at 25 Lee Drive. Our home has been it's been my family home now for 30 years, and I've seen an awful lot of storms. I've been there through tropical storms and hurricanes. I can remember many storms that caused the roads and the yards to fill with water, and it always dissipated relatively quickly within a day or so. This last storm that happened in June, and it's been since the moat was filled in, took days, and the flooding was much more severe in all of the houses, especially on Karen's side of the street over there. I'm a software developer, and I've always kind of been of the opinion if it's not broken, don't fix it. I can look up Michler further up the way where the moat is still there and the drainage there. I went up there right after this whole thing happened, and drainage was still occurring the way that it had before. I just wonder about the design and the effort that went in to put this pipe in place, because I understand there was an effort, there was things that were going to be looked at to be done and everything, but how much time and effort went into there to take a look at how much water would go into that moat and how much water could actually go into the pipe and where the pipe was positioned with the relative to where the water was. I know at this point we've got to do something to fix it. I'm hoping that we can do mitigation through pumping or something like that. If we can't carve back out that moat, I think that was a good thing, but I'm really hopeful that at some point in time we can get this under control, because the property values on our street are going to be affected by this if we have flooding, and we looked at what didn't happen this past weekend, but nobody really expected what happened in June either, because there was just, there's going to be rain, and it was such a deluge that it caused major situations in the neighborhood. So I'm hoping that something can be done about this, and sooner than later, because this is, we're in the hurricane season. We're in Florida, so it's going to rain all the time, and it's really important that something happen here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lawrence Humphrey. And the next speaker will be Clifford Wright. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced your name. Lawrence?
Right. Clifford Wright. Mr.
Lawrence. Oh, Mr. Lawrence. I'll set his card on the side. Clifford Wright?
Yes.
And the next speaker will be Adele Wright.
8 Lee Drive, a 21-year resident there. Well, thank you all for your concern and bringing up many points to this. I think that one thing that is significant is the idea of bringing back the engineer, the design for this pipe system that was put in. The groundwater, again, as everyone's talked about, from the June 6th, maybe 3-inch rain, the groundwater stayed for 5 days. Now, even with Matthew and Irma, within 2 days or so, the water drained. Now, again, if it can be determined how to have the drain go from the neighborhood into the pipe that's there, and with the pumps going, take the water away, fine. But if you want to stay with the pipe, and I think that's your...
Sir, you need to talk in the mic.
I think that the gentleman here wants to stay with the pipe, and he feels that that's, the way things should be. Well, if you're going to stay with it, I think that it's obvious that we need to figure out a way how to bring the groundwater from the west side of Ocean Walk subdivision into that pipe and get it out of there. So, thank you again for realizing how significant this is. And like many have said, of course, previous hurricanes, there was some flooding. We realize that when the intercoastal water backs up and there's nowhere for it to go, there may be some homes that are flooded. But our homes could now be flooded by a heavy rainstorm and not a hurricane. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Adele Wright, and after Adele will be Christopher Allen.
My name's Adele Wright, the other half, living at 8 Lee Drive, right next to Earl Ward's house. And all I have to say is that I didn't take pictures of the flooding that occurred during the hurricanes. We did have water up to the front of our sidewalk that goes to our front door after all of the hurricanes occurred 3 or 4 years ago. It went away. You know, it went away within a day or two. It was, well, 2 days, okay? I have pictures of the standing water that we had in our backyard, in our side yard between Earl's house and ours, of it's standing there 3 days later still. And we never had that before the drain was filled in. So we know you can't undo the drain, but we just need to emphasize that thank you for listening to us. Do something, get it done. Sooner the better. Thanks.
Thank you. Christopher Allen, and after Christopher will be Clint Stover.
Excuse me, Chris had to leave.
Okay, thank you. Clint Stover, and after Clint will be Ed Slavin.
Hello. First of all, thank you for your service. We appreciate what you do here.
State your name, please.
I'm sorry, Clint Stover, 43 Lee Drive. I'm on the eastern side of the street, but we did see an increase in flooding the June 6th event. It was quite a bit more than we're used to over there. It's clearly backing up. First of all, I'd like to talk about Mr. Tredick and his work. Thank you very much. I do agree with the portion you're trying to get the water into the pipe. I've never had an issue with the size of the pipe. I agreed with your comment. The pipe was it was modeled to convey the water, and I agree with that. The problem is the water's not getting in the pipe, and I think we all know that. It's clearly out there next to Michler, and then there's homes, and then there's the swell, which is the road, and that's where the water's collecting. I also agreed with your comments, sir, I think involving the engineer. He is insured. I'm not trying to accuse anyone, but he created an apple, we had an orange, and it's just not working. We have to do something, and we purchased these homes, and the land under the homes has changed. So now we're living in this swimming pool, and I would appreciate some quick fixes if we could, and then some long-term solutions. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Ed Slavin.
Thank you. Ed Slavin, box 3084, edslavin.com. Your staff really does need to clean this microphone between people. They can do it at the City of St. Augustine Beach. Everything's do it yourself around here because of mismanagement. I totally agree. You need scientific peer review, engineering peer review, and it's been my experience in life that the best experts are often cheap or free. Could Mr. Tredick, who's done a really good job on this, get on the phone to the University of Florida Engineering Department and the Department of Construction and Management and get them to get somebody over here, maybe do it for free, to do a peer review. And that's the problem. We don't, Bird Dog, we don't supervise our contractors very well in St. Johns County. And the reason I know that is there are more than 30 neighborhoods in St. Johns County where there's bad flooding going back years. And in the county, they had an engineer who wasn't even a licensed engineer. When you rubber stamp developments and you let them do anything they want because they hire crooked lawyers and crooked politicians, and anybody can call themselves a developer. So you need peer review. The 2004 stormwater plan needs to be redone. You need to work with the county or the city in terms of purchasing, because I don't think your purchasing here in-house is very adequate. You need an inspector general and an ombuds. And most importantly, the lack of respect that Mr. Royal has shown for this neighborhood. Why wasn't every single homeowner notified of the plan? You heard unrebutted testimony from 15 witnesses, and several of the folks said that they didn't know that this project was even going down until they heard the noise from the construction equipment outside. Max Royal needs to be fired. He's incompetent, and Mr. Tredick is doing a good job. Maybe he could be the temporary city manager. But you've got a situation with bad flooding throughout this area, and you will rue the day that we let developers run this town and run this county. And I thank you.
I have no more speaker cards on this item.
Okay, well, there's no action being taken tonight on this item. It is an update from Mr. Tredick and an opportunity to hear and listen to the concerns of the neighbors, which I share, and as an owner of a property that tends to flood, I share their concerns. So I know Mr. Tredick is working on this as quickly as possible. Is there any commissioner that wants to comment any further?
I just want to make sure, Mayor, that we have consensus to write a letter to the engineer and to the installer of the pipe.
I believe there is. And Mr. Slavin, I'm going to, because we need to get through a lot tonight, I'm going to ask you, please, very kindly, kind of keep your comments down a little bit, please. All right, we're going to move on then to the next item under old business, which is the renting of the police garage.
Yes, Commissioners, you discussed this at your last meeting, and the city attorney and the Civic Association representatives developed this agreement that is before you now that allows them to lease the property on behalf of themselves as well as 3 other organizations. Mr. Jones and I, who's the president of the association, have exchanged emails about paying for electricity and other costs, et cetera, and about making some modifications to the garage so they will have access to it. They're willing to pay a certain amount of money for electricity, though they provide free Wi-Fi to the public park, and that takes electricity. I think the agreement is in front of you. If it's acceptable, then I'd ask you to approve it. Mr. Jones is available if you have any questions about it.
Okay, Max, anything else you want to bring up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I will go to public comment next on this. Ms. Palmquist, what item? Is this one or? Yes, this one. Okay.
I have a speaker card for you on this item already. Ray Gay, please. Thank you. Ray Gay.
Do you have a speaker card from Mr. Jones?
I do not.
Then, Mr. Jones, will you fill out a speaker card if you wish to speak?
Ann Palmquist.
Ann Palmquist, 213 10th Street. Let's try it this way. I'm not too allergic to this. I have a couple of issues with this. One, the amount, the economic part of it, but also the total lack of advertising for other occupants of that building. It is not open to the public. It is only under lock and key for the Civic Association and or their members. It is not a public building, even though it has been said that it is. I spoke with the people at the Art Association, and they've expressed interest in being able to expand, providing perhaps ceramic classes to their students and their clientele and members of this community. The idea of having a one occupant continuing a lease without putting it out for open bidding or open invitation seems absolutely abhorrent. I don't believe the commission really understands the impact of that building and the impact and the hardship it puts on the Art Association there and even community use of that. I've had occasion to reserve the little building across the way, the old post office, for a community meeting, and it is so inadequate as far as being able to use for the purpose that the organization that I was involved with wanted, that we didn't use it. The idea of not putting that building out to public citizen involvement and offering that facility at the same agreement that the Civic Association has agreed to. I would also expect, and hopefully the commission would follow through, to have a complete audit of that building. What was it when they took over? What have they paid? What condition is it now, so that the new person could possibly move forward on it. It has not served the purpose, it has not served the city, and it has been a absolute closed shop or private pocket deal, which I know the city does not want to engage in. In real estate, we used to call them pocket listings, and when the owner, the wife of Mr. Jones, said it was a great deal for who? The question at $5 or $1 a year is not a good deal for the city, nor for the citizens, and the commission is responsible for it, not just Mr. Royal. The absolute abdication of your responsibility to open that to a bid or open invitation. I know members of the Art Association have already expressed it and been told a way of no, that lease could get renewed anytime. I do hold the responsibility of being a member of this community, and I expect the commission, all of them, to hold their responsibility of serving the public.
Mr. Tom Reynolds.
Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. I asked the commission to vote no on this. You know all my reasons why. I mean, but you know, just think about it being, it's a 501c4. Okay, that means there's dark money. That means that they don't share the books. And you read the letter that came from the IRS, why they are not a 501c3. Because they didn't comply. The history of the Civic Association is not complying. The county gave them the boot. They came in last. Did the county do that because they were awesome? No, the county did that because of years of abuse. Parking and handicap parking. Remember the 240-volt outlet that was put in? Running a cord from a 240-volt above the sand at the beach. It was bizarre. Slush fund. Everybody knows it's been a slush fund. Taking the volunteers' tips, the Rosenstocks. I mean, really, if there's anybody who's ever been really done wrong, it was Mrs. Nancy Rosenstock. You know, but the one that most amazed me is the unlicensed food vendor, Jasper Green. the criminal record that he had didn't even allow him to get a food license. But yet, who let them operate all those years? The Civic Association. Why, I don't know. And then the one that crushes me, the one that I'd rather get punched in the face for, is what they did to the deaf and blind children of the Florida school. 16 bands, and the one you cancel are the deaf and blind children. That alone, I'd give this guy the boot. Thank you.
Mr. Bill Jones?
First of all, I want to thank the city attorney for his efforts going back and forth trying to negotiate this out.
An address for the record, please.
Bill Jones, P.O. Box 840127, St. Augustine Beach, Florida. I take issue with a number of things that have been said already. First of all, Ms. Palmquist, the Art Association, the Art Studio is one of the coalition members. They've signed off to be part of this deal. They've had a key to the building for 4 years. So I would take issue with that. Mr. Reynolds, I can't even begin to comment on the ridiculousness of his comments. The Civic Association, none of us are paid. Our 990 forms are posted on GuideStar, which is a nonprofit website. The IRS changed our classification. We didn't do so. We have worked tirelessly for the last, me personally, for the last 15 years, and the association for the last 40 years, to provide service and quality of life to our community members. We've been a good partner to the city. People who know us realize that. People who don't like us, and there are a handful here who don't, I respect their opinion but disagree vehemently with their position. Our track record speaks for itself. All I can say is we look forward to continuing to serve the city as long as that 400 square feet is available. And also, just to reiterate,
Mr. Slavin.
You never started the clock.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And back it up to where he's got a minute left.
if I may continue, I wanted to point out to one of the other commenters that that building has no plumbing. It has running water for a water pump from a well to water the grass around it. But in order for the art studio or any other organization to use it for anything but its current use, which is storage, would require thousands of dollars investment by the city to make that building habitable. It's not. It's an old garage. It looks the way it does and is painted and renovated on the inside to some extent because of the effort and the funds that we put into it. So again, we'd like to continue serving the city on behalf of the art studio, the Bocce Group, and the Friends of Scenic A1A and the Civic Association. We would appreciate a confirmation. Thank you.
Ed Slavin.
Thank you. Ed Slavin, box 3084, cleanupcityofstauguestine.blogspot.com. Please table this or reject it. You shouldn't have a lease. It should be a license, and it should be open to any 501c3. This is an all-white, white supremacist group that said that they opposed a museum for civil rights in St. Augustine Beach in honor of the people who waded in here. This is an organization that refused to accept SNAP benefits at the farmers market, and it was stated that they didn't want people from West Augustine coming over here to their all-white city. It's a racist group. Please move to table. Please ask African American and other civil rights groups if they'd like to be involved in this lease. Bill Rosenstock, the persecution of Bill Rosenstock, the ADA violations, the repeated rip-offs of the city of St. Augustine Beach, and charging the vendors at the farmers market $3 a week to park on government land, that was wrong. The finances need to be audited. I totally agree with my friend Ann Palmquist. There's never been a proper audit of the city's relationship. Bill Jones used this garage to store his boat. And I don't understand how, when the city has a public policy saying that all leases should be for fair market value, How do you get $1 a year as fair market value? This is special interest. And besides, why did Max not do what he was supposed to do? Why wasn't there an open solicitation for anybody to be involved instead of letting the Civic Association owns Max, just like the developers do. But this is absolutely wrong. It's not fair market value. It's a scandal, and you should reject this proposal. I would table it. And also, I think it was a breach of contract. They had subleases that were never approved by the city, and that shows that this is a bad faith negotiation. And why isn't it a license? It shouldn't be a lease. It should be a license, cancelable, revocable. Thank you.
I have no more speaker cards on this item.
Okay. The issue of a lease versus a license, and Mr. Slavin did bring that up to me earlier today about, can you address that, Mr. Taylor?
The lease gives us a contractual relationship where we set the terms of the contractual relationship. If there's any terms in here that any commissioners are unhappy with, we can negotiate with them and change those terms. The lease is also, for all intents and purposes, an at-will lease, so the city can change their mind on how they want to handle the situation on a moment-to-moment basis. Part of the memo of understanding is that if anybody approaches Max that wants to use the space, they can come to the commission. We could talk about it, and we could change the relationship and see if we can find something that'll work. So if you later on, if there's some other organization that wants to be involved, it's something that's easy to, you can decide either they have to do it, they don't have to do it. It would be up to the commission. Because basically every month this thing starts fresh and anew, and so at any point if you're unhappy we can do something different with the space. It's not very usable space, so the one thing I will agree with Mr. Jones on, and that the commission needs to understand, is the space is not really, because it has no water, it can't be used for a lot of purposes. So without some sort of retrofit, it does not have a lot of commercial purposes other than for storage. And you have the ability to add more civic associations and civic members if you want down in the future.
Okay, and it has no air conditioning, so it's not even up to standards of a normal market storage space.
Correct.
Probably. Okay.
Mr. Law could tell you it would fail to be rented as commercial space in any number of different ways.
Yes, ma'am, that would be a change of use occupancy, and it would bring down the full weight of the current building code at whatever time that would be.
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right. We finished public comments. Commissioner comments on the lease. You may have some questions about some of the provisions. I know I have. I'll start with the commissioners on the phone. Commissioner Rumwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only thing I had that I saw is I want to make sure insurance, and I saw that was in the lease, so that's good to know. Our city attorney, obviously that would prevent if something happened on their side that would ruin something on the police side, it would all be covered. Is that correct?
Correct. They're supposed to have insurance for their use. Okay. We're supposed to be a lost payee, so we should be getting a copy of the policy they have on the property.
Okay. I think that was something new this time with insurance, so I was glad to see that. I like the idea of if the police department gets another vehicle or if something else needs to happen, that we have a right to get out of the lease. I would like for them to have the same right, that if they decide that they no longer want to be part of that, I think that they would have a right to get out of the lease. Right now, I think we have a 90-day. I don't know if that's mutual, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, they can terminate also.
Okay. All right, that seems to be right. Those are the only two questions I had at the moment. Thank you.
Commissioner George, any terms of the lease that you want to discuss?
Terms, no. No, thank you, Mayor. I'm a little concerned, as I stated before, about some of the issues raised by some of the public speakers. But I don't think that's a primary concern for the some of the majority of the commission. And it looks like there is an understanding between the other interested nonprofits. I also was really, concerned about their interest in having some security there. So this time I don't have any substantive questions. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Samora?
No further questions from my end.
Vice Mayor?
I am just concerned that, once again, we're getting into a 5-year lease for $1 a year. And I understand that there's no, it's not a commercial space. I understand that. But I have a storage unit that I pay for storage. And it's not $1 a year, I can tell you that. I'd love to find a storage space that would only charge me $1 a year. I understand that there's some benefit to the community from the efforts of the Civic Association, and I want to commend you for your organization for that. But we just had a budget meeting last week, folks. Our city is in trouble, and we're going to rent out a viable property for $1 a year. I can't get past that. I'm sorry. I think that we need. I think that we need some other kind of concession. $50 a month, I don't know, something, but $1 a year, it just doesn't seem to make sense. And then we're also obligated for the entire building, as we have been in the past, should something happen to the structure. It just doesn't make sense to me in the financial position that our city is in. So that is my comment. $1 a year.
And your suggestion is $50 a month?
I think that's extraordinarily fair for storage, yeah. I mean, you can, we do have an obligation to rent all of our properties at fair market value. We probably need to take a look at what is fair market value for storage space.
Okay.
Not air conditioned, because if you have air conditioned space, it's much more expensive.
I'm thinking for myself, my comments are, we've already discussed the lease, and at our last meeting we approved the concept of the lease of the storage space with the other charities, local charities that have operations in the area of the pier. So we're done with that. So the lease itself, $1 a year is probably too generous. $50 a month may not be feasible for a charitable organization, but
I'm sorry.
And we can talk about this. The termination clause, 90 days notice, seems to be a little bit too much. I would prefer 60 days notice. And the term, instead of 5 years, 3 years. So those are my comments, is that push the fee up a little bit, maybe a yearly fee of $100, the term 3 years, and the termination clause to 60 days. So and unless there's other commissioners that would like to talk about those terms, and of course we would have to go back to our attorney and to see if the Civic Association would agree to those. Any commissioners, any other comments on those change in terms for the lease?
I would support the shorter term and the shorter termination, the 60 days and the 3 years. I do believe the Civic Association is still going to do some sort of a build out to separate the space at their cost.
Okay.
To sit here and talk about $1 versus $50, $5 a year versus, a few hundred doesn't move the needle for me. So I'm fine with $1. I'm fine with 50. It's fine.
Okay. Commissioners on the phone, any objection to a 3-year contract and a 60-day termination clause?
I think that's a great idea, Mayor. I would support that.
Okay. And I would ask Mr. Jones to consider a little bit more generosity on a yearly lease for us. Would you like to come up and address that for us? A yearly amount, a little bit more than $1, please.
Well, I guess I need to ask the commission, particularly those who object to the lease, what is the value of what the 4 organizations in that 400 square feet do for the city? And I have to ask one commissioner in particular whether $50 a month or $600 a year is going to save the city from the apparent financial peril that we're in.
What about $100 a year?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I just have to remind everybody here that we don't have the income we used to have.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a market anymore. The Art Association, the art studio folks put on their programs and they're free classes. So we're talking about, $25 a year for these 4 groups. It's not a big deal.
Right.
My concern here is the complete oversight or lack of appreciation for what these 4 organizations do for our community. The Scenic A1A folks bring thousands of visitors here. They've got a Moby tour that attracts tourists, driving and walking tourists, which we need in our community right now. Our organization, I've been through the participating merchant program that drives people into our local businesses. I've been through the concerts and the people that come here and stay in our hotels. I'm stunned, frankly, that $99 more a year we would do that.
I'm thinking of our administrative costs, just our cost too, to just kind of a fairness kind of issue of just we continue to want to work with you, and if those terms would be acceptable to you, it would be greatly appreciated, and we appreciate you also.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's less than $10 a month.
All right, so I will make a motion to approve the lease with the following changes. The fee would be $100 a year, the term would be 3 years, and the termination clause would be 60 days instead of 90 days. I need a second.
I'll second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Koska?
No.
Commissioner George?
No.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
And Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
All right, moving on to item number 5, the solid waste non-ad valorem assessment.
Yes, Commissioners, under State Law, Chapter 197.3632, we're to have a written agreement with the tax collector that spells out the terms of what he's to do for us, and that it allows him to collect some money from the non-ad valorem for his services. The city attorney has prepared this agreement. It is similar very much to the one that a previous commissioner had approved in 2011 for the first non-ad valorem assessment. And we ask that you approve it tonight. And the city attorney can answer any questions about the legal terms.
I don't have any questions for the attorney other than there's just a couple of typos in paragraph 2 and in paragraph 3. It references the county, and it's just something your system didn't pick up. It should be the city. Commissioners on the phone, Commissioner Rumwell, any questions about the agreement?
No, that was the only, I had that same typo, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner George?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Samora?
Done here?
Vice Mayor?
No, ma'am.
I'll make a motion that we approve this agreement. If we have any public comment?
Not on this item.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve this agreement.
Second?
Roll call vote, please. Beverly?
Yes, ma'am. Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
Commissioner George? Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes?
And Mayor England?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. The next item is an ordinance change to the Land Development Code for provisions to permit the access of private property from dead-end streets. This is our continuing saga on Pyrus Street, but this is a good change to our ordinances about a permit when it's vehicle access.
Yes, ma'am. The only change from last month was at Commissioner Samora's request for extensions, which was a great idea. So I did add in there, extensions may be granted for 30-day intervals at a fee of $53 each as authorized by the Public Works Director. $53 may seem odd, but that's the cost of a building permit revision fee, and because we're going to be using the same software, I can just move that fee code over.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do.
Okay.
Fiona Godfrey? Lee Godfrey? Who would like to go first?
I think we're just a bit confused.
Please state your name.
Oh,
and-
sorry. Fiona Godfrey, 240 Bluebird Lane. Just a bit confused. Has that gone through? Because I missed sort of what the ordinance was about.
Ms. Godfrey, this is an ordinance that allows the city to establish a permit for people who want, because it's a dead-end street,
Right.
there's no vehicle access to an adjoining lot.
Right.
But if there needs to be, the city can control it and manage it by granting a permit for
Okay.
that. And the length of time people, since there's not supposed to be vehicle access back and forth, it allows the city to manage that and to issue a permit for a time certain or limited period of time to allow them to do some construction or whatever it is they need to do, or have access where it's not supposed to be vehicle access.
Okay.
So that's what the ordinance is about.
Okay, so does that include the barricade? Sorry, does that include the barricade?
No, ma'am, that is something that the city can do at any time that they want to do. They could do that. So this is not about a barricade. That is something the city has the right and the authorization to do at any time. This is about a permit to allow access.
Okay, I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with the barricade and what we've endured because of this whole mess, which you're all aware of. And I think the people on Pyrus must think it's a done deal because I've got signs all around saying coming soon barricade. You put a barricade up, you're putting our family at risk. These people are vile. The profanity were used, the abuse on a 15-year-old child, it is just constant harassment. And they'll congregate at that barricade. And like I said, the ordinance, I don't have an issue with. Absolutely, you're putting a pool or a house in, but if I want to drive down a public street to access my backyard to drop off flats of flowers, I shouldn't have to get a permit for that. The street abuts my yard, completely abuts it. And to me, it just seems not right that all of a sudden I'm denied a right. And that concerns me with those people. The police have been there so many times because of them and their behavior. Just there on the weekend, they were blocking us again. It's name calling, and it's got to stop. It has to stop. And I don't know what the answer is, but you put a barricade in at your given time, They're blocking my way with basketball nets, cars, you name it. A barricade goes in, they're just going to block it even more, and then I'm going to have to maneuver around that. We're yelled at, we're not even allowed on the street by these people. It is a public street. We are allowed to walk on it. We are allowed to drive down it. We are allowed to bicycle on it. We should not be heckled and screamed at constantly and have lights blaring in our house all night long because these people want it. Signs, coming soon, barricade. Is it a done deal? I mean, I think we need to know where we stand with this. The fence is up, we're gonna have a gate. It's just been a nightmare. It's been absolutely horrible with these people. And I don't know what the answer is, but a barricade will just put us in a different dimension with these people because they stand out there staring, taking pictures of us, I mean, as we're working. And I just don't know what to say, but the ordinance, not a big deal, but the barricade, I've got an issue. I feel my legal rights are being really abused here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Godfrey?
Lee Godfrey, 240 Bluebird. I'm sorry, I thought we were here tonight to see what was going on with the barricade. That I have no opinion on, that's fine. I didn't know if you guys were actually going to discuss if the barricade was going up or not. That's why we're here.
I don't think we've have any new information on a barricade.
Okay.
It's on the ordinance.
No, that's why we came this evening. We thought that was being discussed tonight. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further public comments?
No other cards for this item.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions about the ordinance from the commissioners? I ask because we've looked at this before, and I'm going to move us along if there are no questions.
No questions, Mayor.
Commissioner George, any questions about the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. No question.
Commissioner Samora?
No questions.
All
Thank
right,
you for
Vice
adding the
Mayor?
extension.
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, all right, then I'll make a motion that we, oh, that's right.
An ordinance, the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, section 6.02.03, rights of way, ways, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
Second.
I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance on the, before us, and I need a second.
Second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuska?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and I think we need to extend our meeting.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to extend our meeting to 10 o'clock.
Second.
Vote, please.
Okay. Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuska?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item, Max, is about beehives, right?
Yes, ma'am. Because the first part of this, to lease the injured bird recovery facility, will be on the agenda for your September meeting. Miss Diane Spoden is here to speak to you after I'm finished about the beehives. The city has this land, of course, with a retention pond, and I show you on an aerial map, thanks to Mr. Tredick, the location of the bird facility, et cetera, west of Mizell Road and the pond itself. Ms. Spoden, in her email to me on June 17th, tells you that they This would be a project with the Boy Scouts Troop 9101G from the Riverbend District for the St. Johns County beekeepers. The hives would be in a very small grouping and managed by herself, a master beekeeper, and a program director for the St. Johns County beekeepers. She's currently managing 6 similar groupings of over 30 hives. We have the land. It's not going to take up a great deal of property. The bees, beekeeping sounds like a very enterprise, and we would recommend you consider it favorably. Want Ms. Bowden to come to speak to you? She's prepared.
All right. Diane, do you have any comments you'd like to make about this?
Certainly. Diane Spoden, 7424 A1A South. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure we're all weary, so I'll be very quick. A couple of months ago, a wonderful young lady came to me asking if she could help somehow the beekeepers as her Eagle Scout project. She wanted to do something for the environment, and she had built 5 beautiful beehives. We would very much like to locate them on that particular property because it's fenced. So it would limit public access, public interference, potential vandalism also. Very good for the environment, very good for our gardens, and it's also very important to manage healthy colonies of bees rather than let feral bees come in that we can't inspect and manage and control for disposition as well. Our intention is not in any way to interfere or compromise the bird facility, the rehab facility that's over there. And in fact, we would like to locate this very small footprint of beehives on the opposite side. So there'll be no human interference for the bird or the bees, and they're compatible in every way. We will also maintain the area in front of the hives so that personnel that mow the yards don't have to deal with the bees. And I think that's about it.
So the ARC, they are aware of your intention?
No.
Oh, they're not?
Not that I know of.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that probably it would be a good idea to let them know beehives are coming in. Are there birds in a bird cage?
They have, I think they have a shed or something, don't they, Max? And the beehives would be completely on the opposite side of the pond. So it really won't interfere with them at all.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. There may be more questions from the commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
I'll start with is there any public comment on this?
Ed Slavin.
Mr. Slavin.
I strongly support the proposal. We need to do a lot more to encourage pollinators, and it's a great idea, and I commend Dr. Spoden. Thank you.
Commissioners, if there's any questions, the commissioners on the phones, please speak up if you have questions.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any questions. I love the idea of supporting the beehives.
Mayor, I feel the same way. It's a great opportunity for us, and I appreciate them coming to us. Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor?
Mr. Tredick, you're familiar with this property. Do you know where the location of the beehives will be?
Don't have the final location yet. The only thing, the input that I would have is when we locate them, that we consider the areas where we're going to be doing berm work on the Mizell Pond work. So I'll work with them on that. We can find a location, I'm sure.
Awesome. I also think it's a wonderful opportunity.
Commissioner Samora.
So I have to ask a question about the birds and the bees.
They get along just fine.
They get along just fine. That's all I needed to know. I think it's a great project.
The bees don't They live perfectly harmoniously in the wild.
Fantastic.
Yes, I think if you agree with the proposal, then I think the city attorney has to draft an agreement up with the appropriate parties, so we have a clear understanding of what's allowed, what's not allowed, how long it's in effect, and whether there's to be a termination, a term, like 5 years or 3 years or something like that. And we could bring it back to you at your next meeting as a consent agenda item.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve going forward with the lease for the beehives, and that our attorneys work on the agreement to come back next month, along with the agreement with the ARC, and both parties be aware of their existence on the property.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Rumwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Samora,
Yes.
Commissioner George,
Yes.
Mayor England,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Now we're going to the next item, the resolution to establish fees for the commercial solid waste collection and disposal. Mr. Tredick.
Mayor, Commissioners, Bill Tredick, Public Works Director, you have in front of you a resolution to modify the fees related to commercial solid waste collection, disposal, and recycling. And the only change to the former resolution is Exhibit A adds the condominium and apartment complex fees and sets the rate at $178 a year to match that which is in the non-ad valorem assessment. Other than that, the rates are exactly as you approved earlier in the year.
Any public comment?
Not on this item.
All right. Questions for Mr. Tredick? Commissioner Rumwell, any questions?
Not right now, thank you.
Commissioner George?
No, thank you, Your Honor. This is just setting the amounts. We've already kind of done the other, made the other policy decisions, so I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Samora?
Done here?
And Vice Mayor?
Just one question, because we had talked about this before, where we wanted to make sure that the residential rate was not going to be higher than the commercial rate. We've taken care of that, correct?
Yes, yes. This is, the only change here is for dwelling units in commercial service premises.
Okay, thank you.
Establishes that it's the same as the residential rate.
Thank you.
All right. With those comments and opportunity for questions, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for commercial solid waste collection, disposal, and, got to read the ordinance. No, it's a resolution. I'll continue with my motion for the solid waste collection, disposal, and recycling.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner George,
Yes?
Commissioner Rumwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Samora,
Yes.
Mayor England,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I think we have, now we'll go to staff comments.
Yeah, we have the COVID testing.
Oh, the COVID. Thank you. Beverly.
I will be very quick.
No, we're doing okay.
Okay. This basically, I received information from St. Augustine, and they do this contract, which basically is with Mayo Clinic, and they will do the COVID testing for us, for our employees, within 2 days. So instead of employees having to stay out for 2 weeks waiting for the results, we are trying to get it quicker. So it's basically a contract. A city attorney has reviewed it and has made a couple of little changes. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.
I had one other question about what happens when we change to a new healthcare provider, the MFIT.
I did talk to them. They haven't got back with me because they're checking with United Healthcare, but it's still United Healthcare, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Oh, okay.
But they couldn't respond that quickly. I just got this today, so that's why I added it today, so we didn't have to wait another month.
Okay, all right. Other commissioners on the phone? Commissioner Rumwell, any questions?
I have none.
Commissioner George, any questions?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. My question relates to the fact that when I was mayor and vice mayor, I was very much on the front line, especially during natural disaster events. So for the benefit of our mayor and vice mayor, as well as any other commissioner who's extremely, proactive and on the streets, I'd like to know whether this would extend to members of the commission, since we are also employees of the city.
Yes, ma'am, it would, because you are considered an employee.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions?
Wait, I'm sorry. Let me just follow up. So how does it work then if we're not on the health insurance, since this is kind of worked through the city's health insurance plan? Can you just elaborate a little bit more for me?
It is required that there's 25 hours a week that is required to be on the health insurance plan. It was 30. Now that we went to FMIT, it's 25. You can reconsider that at any time that you would like, if you want to bring that up to the commission to discuss it.
Okay, but you're all, and thank you for that. I think the appropriate time for that discussion would probably be during budget hearings, but more to the point on this particular issue though, can you clarify how it is that this would also relate to like the mayor, vice mayor, or commissioners, given that my read on the memorandum had to do with this testing being through Mayo, also working in conjunction with the insurance. So that was the logistical disconnect that I just wasn't following.
Well, if you would have to, I don't know what your insurance is, Commissioner George, but if you were in network, you could use Mayo Clinic. Obviously, you would have to pay if you were not in network with Mayo Clinic. That's, if you have United Healthcare, then you should be covered, because President Trump ended up having several different companies come when COVID first hit and said that they would do that for free. So I don't know, you put me on the spot, I really don't know at this point what your insurance is and so forth, so.
Okay, so I guess I'm just wondering about the logistics. I'd like to also just say for the record, I'm not asking this about me specifically. I've had no problem getting the testing with all the family emergency traveling I've had to do over the prior few months, which I believe is over. But I'm more concerned with the issue for, that my colleagues, so just for the record, I want to put that out there for anybody watching. But it sounds, Beverly, like if there's any testing needing to be done by any commissioner, maybe they just follow up with you and perhaps just show their proof of affiliation with the city when they have testing done through their own insurance. Is that the logical takeaway here?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
So,
Okay,
Commissioner George, Commissioner George, if I could just address your question, I believe that it's covered in the last two paragraphs of the Exhibit A on the very last page for compensation, where it says for companies' employees who are not covered by a health insurance policy, the most you would pay is $46. The advantageous part of this program is that you can be tested and have your results back in 2 days, which is significant because if anyone knows anyone who's been tested, it usually takes now anywhere between 5 and 7 days, but it was taking between 7 and 14 days.
Thank you for pointing that out, Vice Mayor. I can speak from experience that I had a relative who found out on the 15th day that he had been positive while living in a nursing home and exposing everybody for those 14 days through the entire time that he was contagious. So your point is well made, and thank you for pointing out the specific area in that paragraph. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for thinking of all of us as well.
Okay, Commissioner, some more questions.
Yes, just one. Beverly, did you have a chance to see if Flagler Hospital had any kind of plan like this?
I actually hadn't checked on Flagler Hospital, no. If you want me to, I can do that, but, you know, Mayo did make it available to St. Augustine, and I don't know if St. Johns County is doing the same or not. Okay. So if you want, we can look into it further.
I do know that Flagler right now is having a 5 to 7 day turnaround.
My only concern would be the drive up to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. If there could be something found a similar program and fast turnaround that is closer to us would be great.
I haven't seen that,
okay,
honestly, but I mean, I know Flagler is close, but I haven't seen Flagler offered too much time or that people can get in. I know people were lining up at 4 a.m. to get to 7 o'clock first come, first serve, and they close right away. They only test maybe 100 to 200 a day. So it was very difficult.
I wouldn't want to hold this up. I would want to move forward. And if we found something that Flagler offered that was very similar with the turnaround time is the big thing, that would be great.
Okay. All right. Vice Mayor, any?
No, we have one speaker. Go ahead.
We do have a speaker.
Yes, Ed Slavin.
Ed Slavin, Box 3084. I strongly support this and commend Beverly Raddatz for doing it and showing the initiative on it. And furthermore, we need to do protecting their health. And we need to have contact tracing. After someone tests positive for COVID, there needs to be contact tracing. And if I understand correctly, we have one St. Augustine Beach City employee who got COVID. And fortunately, they came out okay. They're still alive. But why wouldn't we encourage contact tracing? Because if you get a positive result and you don't do contact tracing, someone else could get it and somebody else could die. This entire pandemic has been mishandled from the start by Donald John Trump, who needs to be defeated on November 3rd. And everybody in Florida knows that our governor is incompetent, and he's mishandled it as well. He's a national disgrace. But I commend Beverly Raddatz for caring about the employees. We need to work with the employees to make sure that their workplace is safe. The people who are out in the field, like Public Works, we got to keep an eye out for them and make sure that they're not needlessly exposed to this horrible, horrible virus. The people who pick up our trash could easily be exposed to COVID in a heartbeat. And I don't think we have enough PPE for our employees. Mr. Reynolds raises a very good concern, and it's of universal applicability to the police, to the fire, to the county employees, city employees, everybody. And my problem is that Eugene Scalia, who's the Secretary of Labor, never issued a rulemaking for OSHA to protect employees from COVID. They could have done that in February, in March, in April, in May, in June. This reminds me of the book and the movie and the band played on about the AIDS crisis. We're killing people, but you're doing a good job on this one. Thank you.
All right. Do we need a motion on this, Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion that we move forward and approve and enter into the professional services agreement with the Mayo Clinic for COVID testing, subject to final review and approval by our attorney.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner George? Commissioner George?
Sorry, I must have hit the button wrong. I voted yes, and I'm voting yes again. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Max, are we done?
Staff
No,
comments.
Staff comments. All righty. We'll start with you then.
Just very quickly. Thank you for getting through all the items. So the business of the city can move forward. For a while, I thought we weren't going to make it by 10 o'clock.
I know, I had my marching orders from our city manager. Get through.
Thank you.
Machines arrive tomorrow.
Right. Mr. Taylor, any comments?
No, thank you.
All right. Mr. Tredick, you've had to talk quite a bit tonight. Have more to say?
Only one thing. I did meet with a gentleman on the charging station, so we're trying to move forward with that. And hopefully, very soon, we'll have an electric vehicle charger out in the parking lot.
That is wonderful news. I'm very happy to hear that. And this is from the North Florida TPO, right?
Yes.
Yes, this is great there. That is wonderful. Mr. Law?
No additional comments.
Okay, and from our police agency?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, all right. City clerk?
None for me.
And our finance director? No bad news?
No. No comments.
All right. Then I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes?
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much.